This episode was brought to you by Big Moose. Find out about the 1 Million Project at bigmoosecharity.co.
Pals, greetings. Greetings and welcome once again to an episode of Everything Endurance. It is, as always, wonderful to be with you today. It's been a little while again. I say this every episode now. It has been an exceptionally busy couple of months. I'm going to go out there and put in a bit of a personal drop here. It's been a very busy couple of months. It's been a very exciting couple of months. A couple of things stand out for me across this summer. I went and got myself fianced. So I'm going to take this opportunity to abuse my position and say a massive thank you to Shawnee Whale, my now fiance, and a wonderful, wonderful woman who is clearly insane if she's willing to sign up to this for the rest of her life. But yeah, moving on from the shameless abuse of my position there, the other really exciting thing that's happened to me this summer is heading back out to Kenya for the For Rangers Ultra. I imagine you knew I was going to say that, given that you already know what the title of this podcast was. If you already know what the title of this podcast is and you've pressed play on it, you also know this is quite a long episode. We couldn't help it, all right? You're just going to have to forgive us for that. One of the runners this time around, while we were out in Kenya, referred to this race as being pure Hollywood, and it is. You are face-to-face every day with elephant and rhinos and zebras and giraffes and buffaloes and all that other iconic wildlife that you associate with the East African savannah. With helicopters flying overhead, doing reconnaissance, and planes out there as well, with anywhere up to 200 rangers at any given time out there on the course, being expertly managed by the leaders of their various teams, helping to oversee all the runners and keep them safe in some of the most beautiful terrain you're ever going to see. I mean, it's just got a bit of everything, so forgive us if we went on a little long talking about it. And trust me when I say, stuff hit the cutting room floor, okay? I did cut chunks out here. There was just so much to get through. And only so much I was willing to cut. So look in the description below this episode. You'll find timestamps. You can use the timestamps to take this rich meal I've laid out in front of you in separate courses if you would like. Or maybe you're just going to sit down and go through the whole thing in one go. Maybe you've got a really, really long run planned this weekend and you need something to cover the whole thing. Well, you go for it. I'm feeling pretty certain about saying at this point that you're going to enjoy every bite of this. Really push that meal metaphor there. And for the benefit of anyone who doesn't know a lot about the For Rangers Ultra, and seriously, Google it, go and have a look, find some of the video that we've got on YouTube or on our social media. There is an excellent documentary by the superbly talented Ryan Lovejoy. You can find that on our YouTube channel, and that will tell you everything you need to know. I'm not going to delve too far into the backstory. There are earlier episodes of this podcast, and again, I'll put those in the description, which were recorded in the earliest days of the For Rangers Ultra, where we really dug into the nitty-gritty of what brought this race around in the first place and why we're doing it. But in a nutshell, or as close as I can manage to a nutshell, it's a 5-day stage race across the Kenyan savannah with 70 runners from a dozen countries this time around, all racing across open wildlife conservancies, toe-to-toe, face-to-face with the incredible iconic wildlife out there, and running among the rangers, getting to spend time with those wildlife rangers and interact with them and learn more about their lives and their work. And that really is key to what makes this race special, and you will get that from the later interviews, because this race is a fundraiser. It's not a profit maker. Beyond the cost of the logistics, everything else gets folded back into projects that support the welfare of the wildlife rangers who have made it their life's work to put themselves in harm's way on behalf of our remaining wildlife, which is just beautiful if you think about that as a sentence. To get to spend time with them and to see what they do and to see their relationship with the environment and with that wildlife is incredibly inspiring. And it's humbling to be thanked by them for coming out there to do this thing. From their point of view, they're seeing people travel halfway across the world and put themselves through hell because, trust me, yes, it is beautiful, this race. It looks absolutely stunning, but it's still a 5-day ultramarathon in a very, very hot country. It's still extremely difficult. And these rangers will watch the runners pass them by, suffering over and over again. And there's so much gratitude from that side, which feels misplaced to us because we're out there looking at them with so much gratitude in our hearts for how much they put on the line to take care of this beautiful area and the beautiful wildlife that exists there. Just a wonderfully positive and inspiring experience. That's what we're talking about today. That's what we're going into. And as I said, I'm not going to go on for too long. There are earlier episodes. There's video you can go and watch to get more backstory. I'm going to let the interviewees and the interviews tell the story. And I've laid them out in an order for you. Firstly, we've got Edward Ndiritu. And Edward is incredible. I managed to grab a few minutes with him on the night before this year's race. Sun going down at camp, zebras just on the other side of the fence, just the most beautiful, beautiful place. And I managed to grab a few minutes with this absolutely amazing person. You will obviously hear in the interview that I am just a huge fanboy. And yeah, found it genuinely kind of difficult to chat to him. Such is the amount that I am impressed by what he does and what his teams do. So we talk to Edward about the race, about what it gives to the Rangers, and about his own experiences of it, because Edward is not only the head of Lewa Conservancy's Anti-Poaching unit, so not only a member of that elite unit and somebody who has made this decision to dedicate himself to caring for wildlife, he's also done the race. So, he can talk about this from both sides. He's going to paint the picture for us. He's going to talk you through what this race means to the Rangers. Then we're going to chat to Kris King. The last couple of times we've done episodes about Beyond the Ultimate Races, I've found it incredibly interesting. Even though I work with Kris and have done for years now, it's still fascinating to take the time and talk to him about what it's like sat in the driving seat of an event like this, and particularly when it's something as massive in terms of the logistics as this one is. If you compare this to our Ice Ultra, where you're talking about an entire race team, including media and medics of maybe 16 people, out here suddenly there's 150, 200 people involved in those logistics, and everyone has to pull together. What a dizzying experience to be a part of. And Kris, we're going to hear a lot from him about that. Then we're going to talk to our winners. Got Lou Cole, who just did fantastically well. We're also going to talk to James Hassan, or Captain James Hassan, in fact, of the British Army Training Unit in Kenya. And then we're going to talk to Chris Hewitt. And you may have read Chris Hewitt's race blog about the For Rangers Ultra already. We shared it on our social media because we happen to think it was incredibly interesting and incredibly entertaining. And if you haven't, you're probably going to want to after you've heard him talking today. Chris has a very unique perspective on this, having worked with us numerous times as a race medic, helping to patch runners back together and learning from what they've maybe not done entirely right along the way. He's also an experienced ultra runner in his own right. So we wanted to give you a bit of a window into his unique view of what was happening out there in Kenya. Yeah. A couple of notes on sound quality just before we dive in. For Edward's interview, it was a little bit windy. I've corrected for it as well as I can, and that has worked most of the time. But yeah, just be aware of that. And James Hassan and Luke Hall were both speaking to me from Kenya, so occasionally you will hear a few issues with the signal, but that's about it. That's all the warnings out of the way. That's all the caveats. That's definitely enough of me talking. The Rangers Ultra is awesome, and I'm going to let Edward Ndiritu and then our other guests tell you why right now.
My name is Edward Ndiritu. I'm the head of Anti-Poaching unit, Lewa Conservancy here in Kenya.
And you've run this race now, and you've helped us keep the runners safe over the last few years. And can you tell us a little about how the Rangers here have benefited from the fundraising that comes from this race?
I did the race last year. Normally, I do support in providing security for the runners to make sure that they are safe whenever they run through the wildlife, because this is a run where you run and you see wildlife. It's like a walk in the wild. I am one of the beneficiaries of this ultra marathon, Rangers ultra marathon, and I myself and my rangers has benefited a lot through this funds. I remember very well last year through these funds, Rangers and Save the Rhino, they were able to support our rangers during COVID when we had a lot of challenges. They were able to cover our salaries. They were able to continue motivating our rangers by giving them food, by providing the proper equipment. Proper equipment when they are out in the field, because, for the rangers to perform well, you have to look after them. They have also been able to support us during training, because for a good ranger, you have to train them well, because they have to know what they are doing. And also you have to look after them by providing the proper equipment.
For the guys at home that might be watching this, they don't know what a normal day as a ranger is here. So what is a normal day for you guys? How hard is it out there?
A normal ranger or a normal work for us, we ourselves, we say our work of a ranger does not have a Sunday, does not have a Monday, does not have a Christmas, does not have New Year. So we wake up every day, go out in the field, look after the wildlife, make sure they are safe, patrol, count them. And those guys who are on night shift, they go out in the evening, spend time in the field, listening, and making sure the animals are safe, and using the proper equipment, making sure that the wildlife are safe.
You must need some passion for wildlife to do this day after day. Is that what drives you to carry on doing this? Yeah,
to be honest, for a ranger, everyone who is being a ranger is people who have passion. All rangers have passion, because it's not an easy work. You have to sacrifice. You have to give all your life to the wildlife because of future generations. You protect wildlife because of future generations, and you make sure that wildlife are safe, so that my children and children of my children can enjoy what I've seen, or can get the benefit to see wildlife like I do.
I mean, I have to say, we're incredibly grateful for the work that you all do. And it's so impressive how much of yourselves you put into looking after these animals. And I realize it must be very tough out there, but also this is a beautiful, beautiful place, and you are surrounded by beautiful wildlife. Can you tell us a little about what our runners are going to see out there over the next few days?
I said that I did the land last year. The beauty of it, when you are running, other than the other lands, you meet with the rangers, you meet with the beneficiaries, you see them wearing uniform, and you know that what you are setting for, the blisters that you're getting those blisters because of those rangers. The beauty of it is when those rangers are out there clapping for you and they are saying thank you. That is when you feel very good.
And how was your experience of the race? You guys are all very physically fit. You have to be for your job, but how tough is this race?
To be honest, this race is not easy because, you have to learn hills. You have to do hills. You have to do rivers. You have to learn at very harsh conditions. There are no good roads, just wildlife paths. Sometimes you interact with wildlife. You get elephants. Sometimes you have to stop because, the animals are crossing. You give them way fast. If the elephants are crossing, you have to give them way because, you are the one who is disturbing them. This is their park. This is where they are.
Yeah.
And it is fun because, you get to see your wildlife very close to you.
Wow. Thank you very much, Edward. And, good luck to you and your team over the next few days. I hope we don't cause you too much trouble.
No problem at all. And thank you very much for all runners who are running tomorrow. And also to the supporters. For those people who are supporting people like Save the Rhino, for Rangers, we cannot do without you. Because we, the Rangers, we might be having the passion of what we do, but without people like you, we cannot achieve our objective. So you are part and parcel of our success. Thank you very much.
Good morning, then. Kris King, I don't know why I gave you a formal introduction then. We know who you are. Sorry, pal.
Pal.
Yeah, it's just a habit. But there you go.
I'm
not that you're not deserving of it. Yeah, we are. Okay, what are your what's the, who made yours again? Really?
Are we going to go there? This is where you call me a greedy capitalist. They are from a young gentleman called Hugo Boss.
Oh, Hugo. Yeah. I know him well. Yeah, I know. Yeah, sorry. Mine are a Specsavers special, but yours look just as good.
Because, it's no secret you're a Yorkshire communist. It's fine.
Anyway, welcome to our left-wing political commentary show. This might not be what you thought you were signing up for, but here you are. Yeah, morning, pal. How are we doing?
Yeah, I'm good, mate. Good.
Yeah. You recovered? You got back slightly later from Kenya than me, and I swear I still feel like I haven't had a proper night's sleep. How are you doing?
Yeah, no, it's a bit of a whirlwind adventure, isn't it? There's a lot going on in a short amount of time. So coming back and adjusting to regular life takes a bit of time. So I've been doing a lot of dadding and nothing ground you like a toddler. So yeah, when I came back and straight into the mix of fatherhood, it brings you back home quite quickly.
Yeah, there you go. That gives you a perspective, that grounds you. I'm talking about this as if while I'm out there, I'm under a sort of similar level of stress to you, where ultimately most of my stress is just trying to get exactly the right angle when a rhino's walking past a tree, or complaining about the light not being quite the right quality at camp. As a photographer, I'm not quite juggling what you're juggling, and what you're juggling is immense on this race, even compared to the others. And we've started a bit of a habit of this now, of sort of chatting to you about the events. And I think it's been really interesting sort of getting your insights on what it's like to be a race director in this environment. Now, the Feringes Ultra is pure Hollywood from the outside. We've got actual elephants and rhinos and buffalo and giraffe and zebra and all sorts of other wildlife cruising around the course, and 4x4s and rangers on horseback and a helicopter and the fixed wing plane coming overhead. It's sort of every time you go around the corner, there's a radio call somewhere behind a bush that you didn't realize had a ranger hiding behind it. It's a huge operation. So that's, I think, what I want to delve into a little bit this morning. How is it as an experience for you as a race director, being involved in that operation, and how do you fit in, and just how do you stop all the runners getting eaten by lions? I guess that's the big question.
Well, I think I think it falls to having a solid team. We have a lot of luxuries on this race compared to others. So you imagine, like jungle, we don't have very good communications. We've got clear line of communications here. We haven't got a really quick way of extracting on places like the jungle and mountain. We've got helicopters and 4x4s here and planes and 20-minute flight from a hospital if we need to get someone. So we've got a lot of luxury items compared to our other races that make that easy. But then we have got an insane amount of wildlife moving around in an area that's quite high. You've got an ultra marathon, 5 days of 150 miles is a dangerous thing wherever you do it. You know, your body's in extreme fatigue. You're going through this really tense period of time. Your body's under a lot of stress and duress. It's risky. It's a risky thing. Throw in a load of heat, bit of altitude, and now a plethora of wild animals that would happily mash you if given the chance. You know, you end up in this kind of nice mix of risk. And so when we created this event, it took a very long time from concept to delivery because we were trying to, I suppose, establish whether this was dangerous or risky. Now, there's a difference between danger and risk. If it was dangerous, we wouldn't do it. It would be pretty much like business suicide. If there are moderate risks that we think are outweighed by reward, then that's our sweet spot. So normally in life, high risk stuff has a high reward. You know, and people's risk reward register is very different. Like, there's a reason that not many people go base jumping, because people will see base jumping as a high risk, low reward, but some people see it as exceptionally high reward. So the risk is paired off against it and they go do it. And if you ever wanted the idea of like a walking safari, there's an element of risk there and all these kind of things. We think that seeing these animals on foot in the place where they are, in one of the most beautiful protected areas on the planet, is worth it. It is worth the risk. But to mitigate the risk, we just have a number of things that we do. And we kind of took the logic of, well, let's do everything we can. It's probably the best place to start. So yeah, lots of people. So we have lots of people. We have, like you said, a helicopter, a plane and all that. But it all boils down to three things. Our kind of way that we've structured our plan to manage it is, first, observation. We need to observe the landscape that we're running through. So if the runners are running, and if you imagine they're in a collective group that might be 10, 15, 20k apart at any one point, what animals are around? Where are they? Where are they moving? So there's a constant report the entire time to Sam Taylor of rangers. Yeah, he's got 3 or 4 radios at any one time, and there's 200 rangers talking Swahili through, this is the buffalo here, elephant here, It's moving. There's a chopper up in the air that's acting as like almost like a doorman, just telling animals to kind of stop and don't go this way and maybe head that way. So that's observe. So it's amazing, and as you know, as soon as you get up in the helicopter, even a couple of feet, your range of vision is insane. You can see things kind of.
As soon as you're above the tree line, the whole landscape opens up. Yeah.
So now we've observed the landscape and we kind of know what's going on, and we have the biggest chance now of spotting the things that are quite harder to spot, and elephants are relatively easy to see, and we know what the play of the land is. And then the next step is to manage the wildlife. So we've observed everything, step 1. Step 2 is manage wildlife. So very particular, you have to know wildlife. Sam Taylor has worked as a conservancy manager his entire life. I've spent a fair bit of time out there now. You know what animals typically will, so like white rhino are typically a bit more placid than black rhino. Your comfort range to them is a little bit closer, but still they're a big, massive tunned animal. Elephants are generally okay, but big bull elephants in musk are more dangerous. Lion is pretty chilled at the hottest times of day, but probably not so keen to have about in like early morning dusk times when they typically hunt. So you have these kind of like this understanding of the wildlife, and you have to make a collective decision. And Sam often has to make quick decisions based on that, and the rangers will make decisions almost instantly. And so then the next tier, if we manage the wildlife, an animal has its own free will. If it wants to get to water, it will. We have to let it go and cross. We then manage the runners, and that's when we might stop the race, or say stop here, and then an elephant will cross, or just jump in the car for like 100 meters and we'll drive you through this bit. And that change from managing wildlife to managing runner can be seconds. If a rhino just decides that, right, I'm crossing the road, they have to react so quickly, and it's such an amazing job that the team do collectively. And we've got like obviously the cars patrolling, and it's always moving, it's always happening, and it works. We've done 5 or 6 editions. the risk is always there and always will be there, but it's managed to a point where it is safe, and people can come and view these animals at a safe distance and see them in what can sometimes be, 100, 200 meters away. You've got an elephant crossing the road in front of you, or a giraffe, or whatever, and then the kind of risk thing, bar goes down and reward just creeps up. But the reason why we do it in that order of observe, manage wildlife, and manage runners, if we did manage runner, manage wildlife, like flip them round, we'd be stopping the race every 5 seconds. Because if we stopped a runner every time we saw wildlife, the race would probably take like 3 days to do a 50k stage, because there is just so much of it. There is so much of it about that we have to do it that way to create any kind of fluid race structure. So I think it's a very unique and individual system. I feel like there's not many companies in the world that would be able to manage and deliver that. We're pretty happy that we're those guys. But we've not even mentioned the reward to the rangers in all this. That's the big reward, right? There's a personal reward, but then the external reward of you going through the risk that the rangers do every single day and every single night. You're doing it. They do that every day, every night. You're doing it for little short periods, and they haven't got the helicopters and the cars and the planes and everything going around. Your actions and the pain that you put yourself through is for a good cause.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you were talking about the balance of risk and reward there. You're talking about the reward from a runner's perspective, and the reward is that on the ground experience of being face to face with that wildlife and feeling like a part of the environment they're in a way that you can't do inside a metal bubble, inside a tourist vehicle or whatever. It's not the same thing.
It's not.
But
it's not the same.
Yeah. It's not at all. I mean, you can take our word for that if you're listening to this. The difference between being there on foot when you see the wildlife and just being inside a 4x4 is totally different. It's amazing how much more humility any human being has when they're not sat inside a metal box.
It's not very often that you feel bottom of the food chain, is it? As humans, you often feel like you've got the power. In a 4x4, you've got the power to move around and stuff. But when you're on foot and there's a herd of 13, 14 elephant 400 meters away from you feel where you belong. You feel that's where we should be feeling that we are, and you end up just being, okay, I'm much further down the pecking order of this place than I would normally be walking around, and it's just a very special feeling. Even being on foot and not seeing the animals but knowing they're there is special as well. It's a weird, every time you get out the car, obviously you do a periphery check, you're just walking 100 meters, 200 meters. It feels extremely different than just 200 meters in a park, because they're about. You know that in that long grass there could be something. You know that around that corner there could just be a giraffe. It's just this pending excitement the entire time that what am I going to see? What am I going to do? It's a pretty unreal experience, and probably there is no better way to experience wildlife in my opinion. There's no better way.
No, I don't see how you would find a better way. And for the benefit of anyone listening to this that's thinking, come on, you can see an elephant from a mile away, surely. Those things are sneaky.
They creep up on you.
You don't know. Yeah, absolutely, they do. They can be very close before you realise that rustle you just heard in the hedgerow is enormous.
There's been over the 4 or 5 years, there's been certain, I know enough Swahili to know that there's been radio chatter of where did he come from?
Yeah.
Basically, because they just they can travel long distances in a very short amount of time, and they can just be hiding in a set of bushes and trees, chewing away, and then bang, they're just out. And then all the rangers oh, okay, there's one. And, they've got precision eyes. They can see for miles across hillsides, and their eyes are perfected in that environment. But then occasionally, every now and again, a little elephant pops out, and they're like, oh, okay. And it's just part and parcel of the adventure.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And I'd group the rangers into that category as well, in terms of their ability to stealthily sneak up on you all of a sudden.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely have your eyes around you at any given time for a number of reasons. If you decide you're going to take a step off the trail slightly and have a pee behind a bush, because there's every chance there's somebody in full camouflage sitting behind it already.
Exactly. Yeah, so you got to be careful. They're good at their job. But no, I think it one of the things that I think one of the nicest moments of the race this year, and it was something that we've not done before, is so for people that have never done this race, we have a set of rangers. There's probably about 150 of them that will look after the runners for the first 3 days. So they start at Lewa, they go through Barana, and they hand over at Lodaiga to a fresh set of rangers. And then another 150 rangers come on board and take them through Old Jogi and into Old Pegita. And obviously, because we leave those first block of rangers, they don't come to the finish line because they go back onto shift. You know, a lot of them are doing this thing in the day and then going on shift in the night. I kind of made a point of that when they were doing their debrief at the end of the day, it was a nice moment, wasn't it? The sun was setting and they all came over to meet the runners. And what you had then was you had about maybe 100 rangers or slightly less with the runners. And there was this kind of exchange of people. Like it was organically nice without being planned, but you had line of rangers, line of runners. We had like a little thank you to each other. And then the nicest bit for me was when they just merged.
Yeah.
So they just very gently came together, and then what you had then was like 30 minutes of just conversation between two completely different ways of life. And it was just really, like, for me, that was like the warm fuzzy moment where you think, right, they're getting this now. They understand it. These are humans. These are real people that, you know, and the Rangers are understanding it back. The thing that the Rangers get from this is that there's people, it can be a very lonely job being a Ranger. You're out at night and you're with your Ranger buddies for the, you know, week or two rotation that you're on. You're away from your family. It can be very lonely. And then all of a sudden, all these people from around the world come and show that they care. And it just gives them that big morale boost for the time, you know, until the next year that they're back. And they love it. The Rangers absolutely love it. And that's why the Rangers have joined in with the running and all that kind of stuff. So it was a super cool experience for me to see that. But the thing that it drove home to me is when you took that big group picture.
Yeah.
That was only half of the Rangers.
I know.
That's a lot of people we're responsible for. Like, it just doesn't, you know, when you see everyone together, it kind of, that was the thing where I was like, whoa. Yeah, sometimes I lose track. I'm thinking of the runners and thinking of them all separately. But when you put that, that's 500 people throughout the course of the week that we're having to manage, care for, and look after their welfare. So, yeah, it's a big operation.
It is. It is. And it's, you know, that was a big emotional moment as well. I remember that well. Suddenly, this big block of guys in their camouflage and the 4x4s trundling towards camp with dust around it. You know, in a Hollywood film, it would have looked like an invasion. And it's not, and they're moving towards us with the sunset behind us, and everyone just got involved with each other and got chatting. And I think there's something to be said about, you know, the humility that comes from being outside of your vehicle when you're face to face with the wildlife out there. But there's something else to be said about you stepping out of the vehicle and being on the same level as the rangers that are there as well. Because most of the tourists that come into that area, they will see flashing by in a white 4x4, maybe. Yep. You know, nobody joins them on foot or comes over for a chat or to ask how they are. Or whatever else. So the fact that people have come from sort of a dozen or so countries from around the world and want to be there toe to toe, face to face, human to human, and to talk to them. And obviously, we come from a background with a lot more privileges than a lot of the Rangers that you're talking to out there. We can't pretend that we're putting ourselves through what they go through. But we're coming over there to sample it for 5 days and to put ourselves through something incredibly difficult, something life-changing for most of the runners involved in this.
Yeah,
for them, and it
properly humanizes people. Like, so this is the thing, right? So more Rangers died between the 2000 and 2015 than British and American servicemen in Iraq and Afghanistan. Like. Wow. It is a shocking number of Ranger deaths that have occurred when it was at its worst. These people, like, I've been fortunate enough to get to know a lot of these rangers. So not just like Rianto and Joseph, but all of the thing, and you get to know their families and their wife's name, their children's name. So whenever you hear of a ranger death in the area, your heart sinks because because there's a chance that you've met them or you know of them, or like so there was a ranger death last year, and he'd worked on our race, and it's just one of those things where this isn't just a faraway land with some rangers. This is a human who you know. So that's why I was really excited by the runners and the rangers interacting that way, because they are now humans. They're not just these far distance rangers, they're people they know. And then the rangers are running with the runners a lot of the time, and they get a chance to talk to them. So like Wendy, for example, when she finished, she knew a lot about that ranger and his family and stuff like that. And all of a sudden, it's very real then. It's very real. These are real humans putting their life at risk for wildlife. And it becomes much, much more than a race. It becomes much, much more than you just whipping the can round work for a couple of quid. It becomes something that's deep and meaningful to you. And for me, like, that's why I think I love all of our races, but this one is the most rewarding in many ways, just for what I personally get back from it. I think, like, for me personally, this is a thing where, I think it's probably the thing I'm most proud of. Outside of being a dad, this is the thing I'm most proud of. And Sam Taylor and everyone else has been integral. But I'd never be able to do this race on my own, but it's the thing I'm most proud of because it's the most unique, impactful event on the planet in my eyes. And I just want it to keep growing and growing and growing to the point where we're raising millions a year, because we've raised £600,000 up until this point. It's a fantastic number, but more money, less problems, more money, more kit, so it's hard to kind of get the passion over without seeming too in your face, I suppose, at times.
Yeah. And we can't, I don't know how to put it exactly. We can't rest on our laurels with the fundraising. Like, I was blown away when I'd seen the figures, and we're creeping up towards £600,000 that this race has raised. £600,000. We're north of $500,000. You put it in those terms, that suddenly sounds like an awful lot of money, but there's an awful lot of rangers, and I can't imagine that £600,000 really compares very well to the running costs of the kind of operation that's required out there. And how exactly does that money help, and how much does £600,000 help? How much more is needed, would you say?
Well, I think there's never a top end number to that, but insurance premiums are one of the main things that the For Rangers Ultra funding goes to. So making sure that the Rangers have got life insurance policies, so if anything ever happens to them, their family and children are looked after. I think that was primary number one that we could all get behind, of like that. Well, that's a yearly policy. That happens every year, so that's a yearly cost. So there's a commitment now of X amount of pounds, and we've got the reports. Save the Rhino produce the reports of where the money goes to, so if anyone's interested, they can have a deep dive into what's been given where. But if you assume roughly, I haven't got the things off the top of my head, £100 or $100 per policy, and you've got 500 rangers in the area, you can do quick maths to go, that's a lot of money in that area alone. In that area alone. So like there's that. And then morale is insanely important in this. The reason why this area has had a lot of success is because the community outreach programs that they do in the local communities, they go out local policing, and that's unfortunately where a lot of rangers lose their lives. It's not actually about the wildlife and the poaching, it's when they're doing the local police work in Kenya. But they realise that going out into the communities and having that impactful reach out is the first line against poaching. It's the reporting, it's the intelligence, the knowledge. But the second best thing is the morale of the rangers. So if they haven't got the right kit and they're out in the wet and cold, they're not going to want to stay out there. If they can't get back to a place where they can sleep for the night and there's not a warm shower and they haven't been fed well, they're not going to continue as rangers. If they haven't got the right equipment to fight if they need to fight, if they haven't got a facility that if something did happen to them, their family would be looked after, if they haven't got the facility for their children to be educated, it's so much more complex than socks and boots. Even though they need socks and boots, it's a very complex thing. It's becoming more complex and it's becoming harder and harder. So even though they're having success, they've pushed the problem away for now. That problem is going to come back. Everyone knows it. Everyone knows it's going to come back at some point. and they need to be ready for it. So the money doesn't need to, be continuous, and it's been a fantastic amount of money. It needs to grow, and it needs to grow quickly to deal with what's going to come ahead. That investment of money needs to happen now to make sure that they are ready for inevitably when things start getting worse and come back.
Absolutely. And we're talking about a pot of money we've raised so far. That's happened since 2018, and since 2018 there's been a couple of years where the tourism industry that supports that area just was dead, and there was nothing there. So then that money becomes not just a matter of raising morale and buying equipment and providing training, but it becomes a matter of life and death. Like it becomes, that sounds really like hyperbole, but we are talking about it then having to transition for a while there to paying for enough food to take care of everyone in that area. And that's, I mean, that's an incredible amount of responsibility, really. Yeah. So good luck with
it's
that.
Big. It's big. Yeah, I'm definitely not the person to solve that problem. But what we can do is just focus on the things we can do, and that's making sure that we have everyone on the race safe, everyone on the race is full, and the people that are on the race are passionate about the fundraising and spreading the message when they get back, and that happens. So we've got about 300 people, 400 people that have completed that race over the years, are now walking the earth knowing more about that. So, grow and become an amazing thing. And I think if you've never done a multi-day before, this is the perfect race for you. It'll probably be like the worst race in some ways because it is not going to be replicated by any other event you go on. It's pretty remarkable. So it's going to ruin a lot of other events for you, I'm afraid. And I can say that. It makes me sound arrogant, but I can say that confidently. It's a very unique event. So if you've not done a multi-day, it's a very good one to start on because it's not like the others. Our other races, we're trying to beat people up on purpose, essentially, and do this really tough thing. This is what happens when we go, let's forget tough for a second and just go pure experience. So if it's if you've done loads of multi-days and you love multi-days, this has to be on your list. Has to be on your list because it's going to be completely different. If you love everything about multi-days, it has to be on your list to do because it is the best thing about every multi-day you've probably been on. Plus, you have this remarkable area. Take the wildlife and everything out of this area. The race itself is immense. The bloody landscape is some of the most beautiful running territory ever in the home of long distance running. So take everything else away. It's a great race. Bang everything else in. You're not going to find a multi-day ultramarathon or endurance event on the planet that comes close to the experience that you're gonna get on this. So yeah, I may seem like a hard sell, but I'm just so passionate that you're gonna have an amazing time on here. It's not gonna be money, poorly spent. You're definitely all gonna come back from this feeling immensely different about the world and your life. And it's just definitely something that you should be considering. If it's on your ideas board, get it onto the main thing. See you in Kenya.
This is a race where you don't have to worry too much about sort of sounding biased or like I'm doing the hard sell here. It's like, no, it just is that amazing. Like you really are going to see stuff that you just never would have thought possible and have conversations with people that you never in your lifetime would have been face to face with otherwise. And on a level, as humans with humility, and I just think that's a beautiful thing. It's Dave, focusing in on you for a minute, since I'm interviewing Kris King, how does it compare for you as a race director and experience? Because each race has a sort of different profile completely and a slightly different set of skills and demands on your time. Like if you think about the tiny little pocket-sized team that we have to have when we're out in the Arctic, just due to the nature of the place, you are glued to a snowmobile like some kind of Arctic centaur for 5 days. Like it's amazing if I see you sleep, And this one is different. This one, all of a sudden, we've moved from that pocket, 8 or 9 band of warriors kind of thing to, holy crap, we've got a battalion spread out over 50 kilometers in the middle of Kenya. Like, how's that?
It's just there's a lot of moving parts, and I feel comfortable because the team is trusted. You know, like I said, I've mentioned Sam Taylor a few times. Incredible.
Mm.
He has I've never met a mind like him. You know, it's the mind perfect for that event.
I've got ADHD and I can't keep up with Sam. I've never seen anyone process information in 2 languages from 4 radios simultaneously and just keep moving.
His brain works at next level speed. So he's great for that position, and the Rangers respect him, and that's important. The Conservancies is like, he was such a linchpin to this whole thing working. And then you got the Save the Rhino guys that look after that side of things. I don't have to worry about it. They know the fundraising, and they know where the money's going to be spent and where the money's going to go, and all of that's looked after. Then we've got a partnership with the British Army. You know, they're pretty good at setting stuff up. So they're pretty, you know, so realistically on a day-to-day basis, I'm not speaking to all 500 people. I'm speaking to my key team of 10, but they're managing, you know, 50 to 100 people between them. So when you have a good team of 10, when you have good commanders or good captains, you'll know you've got them right, because your day becomes easy. You know, you're not whittling around making loads of decisions, because they're making their decisions for you. So I kind of get it makes it look like I'm really good, but actually I feel a bit like a fraud, because most of the days round I don't really do much. I don't have to make a big decision. But I think with this race in particular, compared to our others, I'm quite relaxed because we've got all this stuff, but it's the realization that something could happen quickly and to any one of those people. So the kind of the incident chance is bigger because you've just got more people.
The risk reward thing shifts for you there.
Yeah, so like you've just got more people. Like you only have to worry about, like you said, like in the ice, it's the 8 salmon. The only thing you got to worry about is them, I don't know, being Sammy.
Yeah, so they're invincible as far as I can tell.
Yeah, so they're pretty much self-contained. So yeah, that's it. And so I over the years have become more relaxed. You can control the controllable variables. I get a little bit grumpy at times when things don't go how we've planned, or you know, they kind of deviate off plan, but that's also what these events are about, right? You've got a strong system adaptive plan, right? That's
all that jazz. Yeah, that's the thing. Outstanding. Well, look, let's mine into some of the nice stuff as well, because I feel like when me and you were talking, it's very much talk to me about logistics and risk and all that sort of stuff. It's a bit grim, isn't it? We are actually having a nice time. I think it's interesting, but hopefully the people listening to this are as well, because
you're still well done.
We're 30 minutes deep now.
Endurance event on its own, this kind of stuff, isn't it?
Oh yeah. You wait till we get to some of the later interviews. They are lengthy. For some reason, people have got a lot to say about this race.
Good.
Yeah, but I'd like to hear some of your highlights from it as well, because you know, we've all got bits of the various races, I think, that we particularly enjoy and moments that we really look forward to. Like, I know one of your favourite views on any of the races is on this event, but what were highlights of your week? What happened for you out there?
So I think the Ranger interaction was a good one. I think that was a nice little moment. I don't know. I feel like this race in particular it was the end of the year for me. So that was the last event I've done, and it's been a busy summer. So we did Highland, Jungle, Mountain, this in very quick succession, and it felt very chaotic. So I think actually a good moment for me was the finish line, because obviously as a director, the finish line is a nice moment anyway. So when everyone kind of brings the adventure to an end, and you know, you get to celebrate everyone's success, and you can see them like growing in real time. It's a beautiful. That was the one thing I missed when we stopped events in COVID. I didn't realize how much I needed that finish line. Just sharing people's kind of finish line feelings is something that kind of props me up and keeps me going. But on this one, I think the highlight for me was that it felt like the end stage of a very big race. Like, so this was like I didn't really have that decompression after the mountain, the jungle or the mountain, because I had the next race to focus on literally the day I got back. I was straight in, and I think you probably sensed it in me. I just had this kind of decompression moment where I'd gone just super. I know we had to get them on the bus and stuff in the following morning, so there's still a little bit, but by that point, with the last one in, I was just, for the first time in properly months, I think, the first time, just had that breathe out moment of like, okay, gap of time now just to do that. So that was about more of a selfish one. But yeah, I think the ranger interaction in terms of race experience, and then also you can never ever beat a helicopter start line, can you? Like as an experience as setting a race off with a helicopter start line is always just super cool. Watching people experience this race for the first time as well is probably another one. We had that, didn't we? Right. So when Bjorn the photographer came for the first time, watching people see this place for the first time is a nice experience in itself, with people just coming around the corner and going, whoa, or the first time, like I think of Rachel running through that herd of zebra and just getting really emotional about it. Like, I love that. I love seeing people process that for the first time, because that's what we work hard for all year round to deliver. So it's just nice. It's a nice little pat on the back, I suppose.
Yeah, I can see that. And I'm always grateful to those people, because, you know, we've done it 4, 5, 6 times for you now probably, and God, I'm not saying that it becomes boring, because there's no way it could do, but you expect the thing that you're about to see around the corner. You know, you've lost that sense of anticipation and that first impact of when you first come round a corner and there are literal zebra there, or giraffes just around the corner just nibbling away at the tops of the trees. When somebody else around you has that experience for the first time, you get some of it again as well. Yeah, it's the same reason I love a finish line. You know, that huge wave of emotion that they get as they come over the line, everyone standing around them gets, you know, the ricochet of that as well, and gets a little bit of it. God, yeah, I love that. Yeah.
Well, we do what we do, right?
Yeah, pretty much is. It's absolutely. Well, look, I knowing as I do that some of the interviews to come later in this episode are already very long, I think I'm going to leave this here for now. But thanks very much, Chris. Much appreciated. No worries.
Have a good day.
You too. Good morning. Talking to us from Kenya, no less, to Lou. Lou, how are you doing? Your backdrop looks incredible. Where are you right now?
Hi, I'm at Iten. I'm at the high altitude training camp in Kenya, about 45 minutes from Eldoret, and it is absolutely stunning here. So I got to extend my trip a wee bit, so come here for a bit of extra training and extra fun.
That is absolutely brilliant. Like, not content with doing 5 days of hard running across the conservancies, you've then gone to a running camp for your downtime afterwards. But what a place to do it, right? You're in like the home of long distance running here. How has it been?
It's amazing. This is the home of champions. So everywhere you go, everybody is running, and they are amazing. Like I was doing a run the other day, doing 8-minute miles, and they passed me like I was stood still. There was about 20 or 30 elite Kenyans who went past me, and I was just like, these guys are so inspirational, and it's just amazing. Absolutely amazing. I love it here.
Oh, I'm made up for you as a runner here. Like, what an absolutely amazing trip to go and do the Rangers Ultra, and somehow I've managed to get over a minute in without saying congratulations, because you also won at the Rangers Ultra, and then you're over here at Mecca for running. You are there among some of the absolute greatest athletes in the world, and coaches and all that experience and stuff you can tap into. This is awesome for you.
Yeah, it's incredible. There's everything here that you could imagine. There's physios, treatments, pools, core sessions, you name it, and they provide it to make you the best runner you can be. Incredible.
Also, it's currently chucking it down here in South Yorkshire where I'm standing, so it also looks beautiful where you are.
Yeah. This is actually one of the most cloudy days we've had this week, so yeah, it's been scorching. I've got sunburned a couple of times. I've got a little bit of sunburn on my nose, but can't complain.
Well, congratulations to you. I'm really pleased. That sounds like an amazing trip.
It did.
And it sounds like this is really, in a sense, part of an ongoing process for you. I mean, to talk about the for Rangers Ultra, we're always going to talk about the training when it comes to people who I'm talking to who've done particularly well in the race. Because I'm working on the assumption here that people are listening to this podcast because they want to know how you did it, because they're going to have a go at doing it themselves, whether they're going for back or middle of the pack or they're going for right up at the front like you. They're looking to glean a bit of information out of it. Things seem to be on an upward tick for you in terms of your running and your training and stuff. So let's go straight in. What was your preparation for the Rangers Ultra like? What did your training look like?
So the as you say, the upward tick has been an ongoing thing for 5 years. So I started running 5 years ago, and I'm not an elite athlete. I was just a Joe Bloggs mum, and I've just gradually increased my fitness, increased my strength, increased my speed over the past 5 years, and took on a coach about 2 years ago. She built me up, worked fantastically with her, and then about 5 months ago, I did a little event. I don't know whether anybody's heard of it, called the Highland Ultra, or the BTA. And I bumped into a girl called Lauren Gregory, and she won the Highland Ultra, and I was so inspired by her. So I did a little bit of background research in her, and I found out that she was a coach. So about 2 months ago, well, maybe a bit more now, 3 months ago, switched over to working with Lauren. She'd obviously seen my potential at Highland Ultra and decided to see how much she could glean out of me. So she upped my training drastically. Lots of speed work, lots of hill, lots of back-to-back days, lots of weighted pack runs, so that my training schedule essentially tripled over the course of 2 weeks. Up until 2 weeks before I went to Rangers, when I did my big training week. And all the time I was kind of, are you sure this isn't too much? Are you sure? And she was like, no, you've got this. I'm watching you. You know, she supported me every step of the way, and she was right there making sure of getting feedback, and we were bouncing off each other. And if I was feeling a little bit weaker, she was like, right, okay, hold back on that one, go a little slower. So she worked really, really closely with me, but at the same time pushing to get my potential, and she trusted me more than I trusted myself, which was amazing. So I went into Rangers probably the fittest, strongest, and feeling the most confident that I'd ever been as a runner, and secretly wanting to do well, but not really believing in myself. And all the time, Lauren was saying, you can do it. If you really want to, you can podium, just believe, get up to the front, keep your focus, maximize your recovery, and just go for it. So I did. And
here we are.
Yeah. Never thought that was possible ever in my life. But yeah. So,
well, I mean, it's not like you turned up at the Highland Ultra as a weak runner. Like, there's no way that I would say that. And nobody gets up. You know what that course is like. It's really technical, not very forgiving at all. Like, nobody who's a weak runner is going to do as well as you did there. But this was brilliant. You were flying. And I really enjoy seeing an athlete who is obviously really enjoying themselves. Yeah. Seems a stupid thing to say in Kenya because everyone's enjoying themselves. They're looking at the rhinos and the zebras and having a great time. But it wasn't just that. You seem to have that absolute joy of movement thing going on where your body was doing everything you were asking it to. Is that a fair assessment?
That is an understatement. I was grinning from ear to ear from the moment I woke up in the morning to the moment I went to bed at night. Even when I was in the hurt locker in pain, I was still having a ball, because how can you be sad when you're trying really hard and you're doing really well, but then you've got a rhino right next to you? And it's just an incredible moment. And there was moments that took my breath away. And it was my birthday on the Thursday, and I got to see a baby rhino and Alfie, the blind rhino. And I spent about 10 minutes crying because I was so overwhelmed and so happy And it was just the most incredible moment of my entire life. I've just got to say, it was just amazing. The entire thing from start to finish was amazing. But don't get me wrong, it was tough.
Yeah. We will ground things in a minute and come to that. There's nothing easy about 220 kilometers of running over 5 days. But I love what you were saying there about Alfie and the baby rhino that was there. I had the absolute privilege of standing on that corner for an hour, watching every runner come through and seeing all of their reactions. And I could see the moment you were having when you arrived, and I was so pleased for you. It's just stunning to come around that corner and boom, there's Alfie and the rangers who handle him, who are, their relationship's beautiful to watch as well.
Yeah, and knowing that we were going to be the only people to meet that baby rhino as well, because it wasn't born last year, and next year it'll be too old and it'll be moving out, and that was something special. But you just can't, honestly, I cannot put it into words. It was just so incredible. But the whole experience, every time I saw an animal, whether it be in camp, whether it be at a distance, whether it be close up passing us or crossing the trail that we were supposed to be running, it was just amazing. I mean,
and there was a bit of that on this one. Like I remember traffic incidents in the past during the Rangers Ultra, but on this one there seemed to be literal zebra crossings popping up left, right, and centre on some of the days. It was, you were in amongst it. What was your hit list? What did you get to see?
Oh gosh, I saw. There's so many animals, I can't even list them all. But I saw rhino. Saw elephants, baby elephants, zebra, impalas. Oh my gosh. I can't even think of everything. There was just so much. The giraffe, like coming into camp and just standing at the camp. There was so many incredible moments, and you're just thinking, is this real? Lying in bed on a night and listening to the lions roar. I mean, thing that sums up Kenya as much as hearing a lion roar, and it was just incredible. But
man, that sound echoes as well, doesn't it? You're not expecting quite what it sounds like from the sort of Hollywood experiences you might have had of hearing it on TV or whatever. In the real world, it's a big guttural barrel-shaped bellow that just rattles around everywhere.
And it woke you up from even the deepest sleep. I mean, we were exhausted, but it was still waking us up every hour just as it was giving out this huge roar. And, it was just incredible. You couldn't...
and there's no one at camp that's going to go and tell that lion to shut up either. That's just happening.
Yeah, that's just one of those things you have to deal with.
Yeah.
How awful. Yeah.
How awful, yeah. But the whole experience was, as you can tell, I'm still in cloud 9.
Well, I'm glad. Well, I mean, you've carried on, haven't you? You're still very much in it. I'm doing my best not to be jealous. Well, I guess we are going to have to focus on the fact that it is still an ultramarathon, and bits of it are still quite tough. So let's just climb down for a second. I don't know what your expectations of the race were going in, really, so how tough you expected it to be, but what were some of the tougher aspects of it? And was there anything that was surprisingly tough about it? Anything you maybe hadn't quite seen coming?
Yeah, so the race itself, obviously doing back-to-back long runs every day is difficult, but then when you're putting it at altitude and then you add in the heat, and then you add in the fact that you're sleeping in tents and you don't have a hotel room to go and shower in and recover and all the rest of it, and your sleep gets disturbed by people going in and out of the tent. So there's all these other factors that kind of come in. But for me, one of the biggest hits, even though I'd done heat, like acclimation training, I still really got affected by the heat. The heat was incredible, especially day 2 and 3. There was some real like balls that we went through where it was just like a pressure cooker, and it just zapped your energy. And as much as I was trying to keep the fuel and the liquids going in, it was so hard. And just that was a big shock to the system. I don't think I realised just how hot it was going to be, because you're used to heat. When you take heat and you take away any movement of air, and it's just intense at altitude, that was something else. And then the other thing that really got me was I struggled quite a bit from day 3 onwards with just feeling really queasy all the time, and I don't know whether it was just the exhaustion, a little bit of dehydration, the altitude, or just the poor food choices that I had. But yeah, just really struggled. But that's where the medics were incredible. Oh my gosh, they were just there and picked up straight away. Got an antiemetic. Within 20 minutes, I was back up and going. I mean, it was so bad on day 3, I nearly never started. So
Wow.
that was...
Oh, I hadn't picked up on that moment. You nearly...
Yeah. I was really, really ill on the morning of day 3, and just feeling really sick and queasy, dizzy, just not myself. Went to see the medics, and they just explained that it was probably a bit of dehydration and just a bit of stress, really. But they basically just said, well, how about start with them, start with the rest of the group, go to checkpoint 1, and we'll check in with you at checkpoint 1. If you're still feeling poorly, that's not a problem. We can either give you some treatment, or we can step in, or you can pull out, and we'll go from there. And they were so supportive, and even then they kept driving up alongside me and checking in, and every couple of miles, how are you doing? Are you all right? And so they were really, really good and supportive. But yeah, that was nearly the end of my race.
Wow.
Which is crazy to think. Yeah.
And you were just going into a particularly hot and tough day there as well. I know exactly the conditions you're talking about. And there was a part of stage 3 that we were referring to as Death Valley, and we were driving around it in an air-conditioned 4x4. I could see the effect it was starting to have on the runners. That was a tough old grind.
Yeah, that was really hot. I mean, the air didn't move. The air didn't move at all. And you had 2 choices. You kept running to keep the air moving around you, or you walked, and then the air was just still. So it was like, which is the lesser of the 2 evils? So we kind of jeffed through the valley, but it was ridiculously hot. I mean, everybody got to the checkpoint just before the big climb, and the first thing most people did was pour water over themselves, because it was just never known heat like it. Honestly, it was. But at the same time, the views and the cliffs around there was just, it was amazing. So even though it was painful, it was still awesome.
You mentioned your sort of food choice there being a factor as well. And you've got to have food in that kit that you can eat when you are feeling bad. And how do you know what that's going to be when you get there? Were you happy with your choice of nutrition you brought along with you, or were there some lessons in there to learn?
Oh, nutrition. Oh, that was one of probably my biggest fails. So I did not expect to be running as hard as I was every day, and to be pushing as much as I was every day. I also didn't expect to be coming back to camp so early in the day. So I thought I was going to be having breakfast, having fuel during the run, and then having an evening meal. So I was extremely short of fuel, because I'd calculated my fuel for a standard kind of easy long run, that kind of thing, not for racing every day. So I was going through my fuel a lot quicker, getting back to camp. When I got back to camp, it was only 1-2 o'clock. I was ready for my evening meal, but knowing that I had to make that in the evening so that I was fueled for the next day. And there was that gap in between getting back to camp and having my evening meal where I had no fuel. So I was having to beg, steal and borrow. But that's where everybody is so close and so supportive and helpful, and people were helping other people out, and we were swapping meals. If you couldn't stomach one thing, you were swapping it for something else. And because I had a lot of big tasting foods like chilies and curries, and when I found that I got sick, I couldn't eat any of them.
Oh,
So
no.
just having to have porridge and mashed potato. Nice, plain, easy, digestible foods. But yeah, we were just swapping, and different people were saying, well, I've got this, and some people were giving, some people were kind of going, oh, well, I've got too much of this and I want to lighten the load a little bit. So that was brilliant. And that's where, you know, these kind of things, you become so close and you become like a family, and everybody knows everybody and everybody helps everybody and everybody's cheering everybody else on. And so, yeah, but my fuel was definitely my biggest learning curve.
No, well, I'm glad it brought out the best in the group. At least there was that in it, because I love to see that among a group of runners. And I have to say, you guys were a particularly tight group. And from early on as well, I saw a lot of the bartering and, well, I've got some of this, I'll swap you for that, or just helping each other out along the way. And it's a big part of it.
Everything from plasters to paracetamol to food, water, hydration tablets. We were all helping each other, and what one person was needing, another person would maybe have extra of, or we're not needing that but needing this. But we were really close before we even got to Kenya. I mean, we'd set up a wee chat group, and we'd all come really kind of bonded through that. And it wasn't just Rangers chat. We were sharing photos of dogs and cats and where we'd been training and days out that we'd had. So we'd become this really close group before we even got there. And then it just compounded it once we were in the setting. And yeah, it was the best team building exercise you could ever imagine doing.
I think it's a bit of a natural characteristic of the ultra running scene in general. It is this, you can't do it on your own. Not entirely. You can't run one of these races without there being a support crew out there. This is why it's always such a big thing when people talk about unsupported records and stuff. It's generally, you're never alone, and you are tapping into other people's knowledge and experience and their willingness to work together in order to get through these big challenges. And yeah, we definitely saw that out in Kenya. That was awesome.
I've got to kind of draw on that a bit further and just say I have to give a massive shout out to Katie Barker, because we ran 4 of the stages, literally like side by side, and we finished 4 of the stages together. But we just found that we worked really well together and we ran really well together. And when one of us was down, the other one kept going, and vice versa. So we worked well, and that works. You usually find on things like this, you will buddy up with somebody just to get you through those long, dark moments. And you never know when they're going to hit. They could be at the most incredible moment when you're passing a herd of elephants, or it could be a long gravel road. You just don't know what's going to be your hurt locker moment. And having somebody beside you just to say, right, come on, we can do this, just makes such a massive difference.
Absolutely it does. And you know, you've mentioned hurt locker moment there. It's another natural aspect of ultra running. Everybody at some point will hit a low, probably multiple ones across a 5-day event.
Yeah, and especially if you're working hard, they can be long and regular.
Absolutely. And having somebody beside you who's helping you along, that's definitely going to share that load and give you opportunities to work your way out of that. But what else do you do? What other tactics do you employ when you get into those moments? Because there are moments during a race where you will regret ever putting on a pair of running shoes, and you've got to have somewhere to go.
Yeah, and there were several moments I questioned my life choices. But yeah, when I get into these kind of what I call like caves, so that's where I draw on kind of inner strength, and it's a case of, so I use a few different tools. So whether it be counting, sometimes I sing to myself, think about breaking it down, people who inspire me to kind of keep going. Well, if so-and-so was here, they'd be cheering me on, I'll do that. But yeah, for me, one of my big ones this trip was counting. So it was the amount of times I counted to 20 is just I couldn't even put it into number. But I was, at some points I was having to Jeff. So it was 20 run, 20 walk, 20 run, 20 walk, just to keep that momentum going and to get you through that period of
You're going to have to explain the term Jeff to me in this context.
Right. Yeah. So Jeffing is named after a guy who invented it. I can't remember his name, Jeff something. But it basically means to run walk. So you do a period of walking and a period of running. And when it was really hot or really hilly, or just if we were really tired, we would have to resort to Jeffing. And one of the easiest blocks that we could do without having to overthink about it, because when you get tired, your brain doesn't work as well. And simple things like trying to count to 100 just won't happen. So we could only really do 20 comfortably in our head. So we were either doing 40-20, so 2 sets of 20 running and then 1 set of 20 walking, or we were doing 20-20. And that just gets you through these moments where your energy's low, you're feeling dehydrated, you're on particularly rough ground, or you've just got somebody on your tail and you just want to kind of move forward a bit quicker. And it just helps up that pace a little bit rather than just walking it. You just keep that kind of positive momentum going and you're just keeping a little bit more pace. I mean, our average pace when we were Jeffing, was almost as good as some of our easy running paces when we were just constantly running. So it worked out really well, and we were using less energy, obviously, because we were getting these walk breaks in. But yeah, so that worked really well for us. But I'm quite mentally strong, and I can break things down into sections, and I just kind of, I stopped thinking about how far I've gone and how far I have to go, and I just focused on the mile I'm in, and I just become blinkered, and I determined almost, and it's like, right, just get to the end of this mile, you get to the end of this mile, and then you start the next mile, and then so on and so forth, and you get through it. Before you know it, you've done 29 miles and you're finishing. And and every day I woke up thinking, oh my gosh, I don't think I could do this today, and every day I crossed the finish line going, well, actually that was pretty good. So
yeah, you can beat yourself up for those negative thoughts as well. And I've seen this too, where, and I guess I experienced it myself when I did the Ice Ultra all those years ago, but times where you've got your head down and you're not feeling good. You are calorie deprived and sleep deprived. You've been under stress for a few days, and for no reason your moods just drop through the floor and you're not making great decisions. And it's easy in those moments to be like, oh man, I'm bad at this. This is me. I'm failing right now, rather than what you're suggesting here, which is to just compartmentalize that you're just struggling now. You're just going to worry about this mile. The next mile may well be completely different. So there's no point worrying about that right now. Yeah. Yeah.
It's so easy to catastrophize. Can't even say it now. Catastrophize. I can't say it. You know what I mean?
I know what you mean.
And just once that negativity starts, just roll with it. And then before you know it, you're like, oh, well, I quit. But one thing I've learned is that these moments, they never last. Even if you're feeling that you cannot put one foot in front of the other, just slow right down, take a breath, take a breather. It'll come right. Eventually it'll come right. Obviously, don't push yourself until you break. But if you just kind of step back and just say, well, do you know what? I just need a moment. It's going to pass. I just need a moment. And you usually get through it. And I had a really bad period on, I think it was day 5. It was either day 4 or day 5. And I was struggling to keep one of my gels down. And I spent about 4 miles with this gel coming into my mouth and having to re-swallow it. And it was awful. I was mentally broken at that point because it was just so horrible. And I couldn't talk. I was literally blinkered into this moment. But that's another moment where Katie kind of helped me through, and she was just like, come on, right, 20 run. And I didn't respond to her. I didn't talk to her or anything. I couldn't communicate at that moment. I was in such a bad place. but she just kept 20 run, 20 walk, and I just kept ticking through. After 4 miles, it was almost like somebody had flicked a switch and the strength just suddenly all came back. The blinkers opened up, the lights came back on, I started thinking again, I was communicating again, and it's so weird that it just went so fast. But yeah, these moments, you just don't know when they're going to hit, and so bizarre. And I know I've other runners on course who went through the same moments, and trying to encourage people through and just getting them alongside and just, right, come on, 1, 2, 1, 2.
Yeah.
So hard.
I think you've struck on the right thing there. You know, you've got to find an external structure to stick to keep you moving in those moments, because your brain's clocked out for a while. It's shut down right at this moment, and until it's finished its reset cycle or whatever it is that it's up to here, you've got to go somewhere else. You've got to concentrate on something different. And even if all that is 20, 20, 20, sooner or later you'll do a count of 20 that ends with you feeling much better inexplicably, and you'll ramp back up again.
Exactly. Yeah. And to be honest with you, the good moments, I mean, we're talking about all this pain and hurt locker and things like that, and yes, they came several times each day, but the good moments way outweigh it. I mean, there was moments I was like, I'm never doing this again. And as soon as I crossed that finish line, it was like, oh, I wonder if I can sign up for next year. Literally, I mean, it is one of those things. So even when you're going through the deepest, darkest pain, you're still pulling all these positives from it and looking at how strong you're becoming and how much you've overcome. And it's just incredible to know that you can get through this moment where you think you're not strong enough, and then you do it and you're like, wow, I really am strong and I really am doing well. And sometimes it surprises you just how much, how well you've coped. And
and then you've pulled a positive out of the experience. Then you've taken a lesson from it. You've given yourself more confidence by being resilient in that moment.
Yeah, and it's such a good feeling, and to know that, wow, that didn't actually break me, and I wonder what else I'm capable of, and to want to do it again is just you just know that you've had positive experience, and there's nobody who can go into this race or any multi-day and come out as the same person. You change. There's something that happens in those 3 to 5 days, however long the race is, and it changes you. It changes your mindset, it changes your thoughts on yourself, your perception on priorities and how you cope with things, and you just become so much stronger and more rounded. It's just incredible.
Yeah. I've been watching runners go through that kind of experience for a good few years now, and it's honestly, I think I've alluded to this a few times, is part of what keeps me coming back doing what I'm doing, is just bearing witness to that, being able to tap into it, even that slightest little bit. The number of runners who've crossed the finish line and you can see they are now more confident, more sure of themselves, more certain that they can cope with whatever life throws at them when they get back to their office at home, wherever that happens to be. Yeah.
And whether they're first or last, I mean, they all went through the same journey. And I would say my admiration is for the people who were out there in that heat all day. And I mean, as hard as it was to do it at the front of the pack, doing it at the back of the pack, those guys just had incredible strength and perseverance, and they blew my mind. And to see them coming in at the end of the day and cheering them and just see the accomplishment that they've reached, and that was just, that just made it worthwhile. And sitting and watching people come in and just seeing the joy and celebration, and just amazing. Love every moment. And I think that was finishing yourself.
Yeah, I'd like to think so. Not having finished myself, I'll have to take your word for that. But what about the Rangers? Did you get much opportunity to sort of interact with them when you were out on the course? A lot of people have talked about how much of a positive experience that was too.
those guys are incredible. I mean, they're out there in the heat, in full uniforms, all day, every day, and they do incredibly long shifts. But yeah, it was quite funny because you'll just hear a rustle in a bush and then somebody will just go, Jambo! And you're just like, oh, there's a ranger. And he just pops up with a few sprigs of like tree on his hat. And you don't realise they're there and that they're so good at hiding, camouflaging, staying cool, staying in the shade. But they're so supportive, so encouraging. But never, ever take a ranger's distance for granted, because they will tell you 2 kilometres and it is not 2 kilometres, it's 5 kilometres. Honestly, I love their measurement system. There was
I'm not sure what they're basing their distances on, or if they're just giving you an answer that they think is going to cheer you up because it doesn't sound too far. I don't know, but yeah, I've heard a few reports of that.
Yeah, but those guys are just incredible. And there was hundreds, and one of the most incredible moments for me, and it still gives me a lump in my throat, was seeing Chris and all the 100 rangers come walking towards us across the field as they came to say goodbye on the 3rd day because they were handing over to another team. They all lined up, and we runners lined up opposite them, and that was just incredible, and just to cheer them, and yeah, absolutely awe-inspiring. And then watching them walk off into the sunset as they went to go get ready to start another shift. So they'd spent all day looking after us, and then they were going home to work. And that is just incredible. And honestly, cannot thank them enough. Everything that they do is just incredible. And they're so positive as well.
And I think that was lovely to see. Also, when Chris listens back to this, he's going to be really pleased to hear you say that, because that was his highlight. That was the thing that he went back to, was the moment where we managed to bring the whole group of rangers from the first couple of days over to the camp. That was huge for Chris as well. So he'll be really happy to hear you say that.
For that massive photograph. That was, and just to be able to stand next to them and shake their hand and thank them personally, and to talk to them and find out about them and where they live and the families and things like that. And yeah, it was just so nice. Really was. Incredible.
It's lovely to watch the runners and the rangers interacting with each other, because the rangers are always so grateful for you just being there, because they know that you're going through a horrible ordeal voluntarily in order to help raise money that directly benefits them. And there's a lot of gratitude. They all seem, to a man, really, really happy for you to be there. And at the same time, I'm watching the runners approaching them, trying to thank them for how hard they work, how looked after they've felt for the last few days, that what they know they must be putting in to work those incredibly long, hot shifts or overnight out there looking after the animals. There's so much gratitude on both sides of the arrangement. It's
I mean, they were always alert and always watching and making sure we were safe. And if there was any, there was one point there was elephants crossing the track. Well, there was elephants on one side and elephants on the other side, and they knew that one had to go to the other. So they had to stop us running. And the rangers were incredible, making sure we were safe and communicating with everybody and just getting the elephants to one side so that we could pass safely. And all the time they're just on watch and just keeping the communication going between each other to make sure that all the way through the race we felt we were protected and we were safe, which is amazing considering where we were and the amount of wildlife and the amount of risk in this area. And it was just incredible. I never felt endangered at any single moment because I knew that they were all there, and the helicopters and the airplanes. And I mean, the airplanes, oh my gosh, they came so low and it was so incredible.
You can tell the spotter pilots really do enjoy their job as well.
Yes, they do. Yeah. The buzzers. That was another highlight, was just the planes coming over and just kind of giving us a wave. And and the helicopters just flying alongside and seeing Harry and the other team waving at us. And it was, you just, even when you were on your own, you weren't on your own. So it was just amazing. Yeah.
Incredible. Well, look, we've done exactly what I knew we would do. Everyone that I've spoken to about this race has ended up speaking about twice as long as I had scheduled, because there is just so much to cover.
I could go on for another hour yet. It was just so
I'd be happy to talk to you about it for another hour as well. We're both as bad as each other here, but I guess I'm going to leave with sort of one useful fact question for the people who might be listening at home. So, having been through the race now, and you know, you've been through the course, you know what kit worked for you and what didn't work for you when you were there. You know what you were hankering for in the evenings when you got to camp, what worked in terms of your sleep system and what didn't. If you've got a kit-related bit of knowledge you would impart on the next group of runners that we bring through, what would you tell them? What should they have in their pack?
I would say the most essential thing is just practice with your kit and your feet. Make sure your shoes are the right size and you've got enough room for your feet to swell. Make sure you tested your shoes, your socks, your running gear, nothing rubs, your pack. And make sure you've tested everything. And then just don't take anything that you don't need. Pack only your essential items, because I saw people who were running with packs that were sometimes 12, 13 kilograms. And I had a fairly light pack. I mean, mine was about 9 kilograms when I started. And that was with water and the GPS device. So mine was pretty light and I was struggling. And there was people with packs that were way, way heavier. So just ditch the things that you don't need. Take only your essentials, take them light, and practice with everything.
That is great advice. Yeah. That really, really is good advice in general. And I'd agree with that. I see a lot of runners come into these events and they'll say things like, well, I knew I was going to be pretty slow, so I've packed a bit of extra stuff. Like, well, now you're definitely going to be pretty slow. You did not need that 6th pair of socks. You know. Yeah.
And the people who come in and they've bought a new pair of shoes for doing the race, or they've got a new pack for doing the race and haven't had chance to make adjustments or to fit it properly to them or to make sure that it does actually work. I mean, a lot of people had packs that were rubbing and not sitting right because they hadn't tried them. And whereas mine, I'd added padding, I'd added extra straps, I'd added bits of tailoring just to make it fit me. So, practice.
Ended up elaborating on what was meant to be a very, very quick question there, but it is absolutely sound advice. Just like we said earlier, there's going to be times when you're in a really dark mental place. Don't give yourself more reasons to be there, because if your pack is rubbing you on day 1, then by day 2, that's going to be a wound and you're going to be in pain for the next 4 days. And that's going to drive you into that dark space so much quicker.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people had sore feet, and if you can prevent it, do it. Yeah.
There you go. Do your planning. Yeah. That's the Lou Cole way. Yeah. Well, Lou, thank you. It's been exceptionally enjoyable starting my day chatting to you today. And seeing Kenya again over your shoulder, I miss it every time I get home. So, congratulations.
Swim now, so a little bit of a swim and a sunbathe. So, but it's been great talking to you. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, and congratulations again. You have a great time out there in Iceland, and I'll speak to you again soon.
Thank you very much.
Good morning, then, to James Hassan, all the way from Kenya. James, how are you?
I'm good. It's afternoon here. It's lunchtime here, so all good. Enjoying the 20 odd degrees outside and the sunshine. It's terrible, really.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, we covered that very briefly before I started recording, and I wasn't sure you were going to bring it back up again. But yeah, just outside my attic window here, it is pouring with rain, about 13 degrees. So you definitely win in Kenya over Barnsley at the moment. How are you feeling post-race? Because we're not that far on from when it finished yet, and I'm always interested in genuinely how the athletes are feeling in the aftermath of these. And I know anyone listening at home who's thinking of signing up for something like this will be wondering about the effects of it too. So how are you feeling physically? How did recovery go? Yeah.
Physically, I'm absolutely fine. But I went home on the Friday evening at the end of the race because I was only sort of 10 miles down the road. My wife had met me at the finish line. Stayed, had a few beers, and then went back to my own comfy bed rather than another night in a cot bed. And Saturday morning, I was up doing our equivalent of park run. I went for a gentle 5K, around the camp that I'm on, and it was all good. I've got one black toenail and one little blister, but apart from that, yeah, fine.
Yeah, well, there you go. The black toenail just marks you out as an ultra runner. That's a badge of honor rather than anything more than an inconvenience. But that's outstanding. I mean, what do you put that down to? And anyone watching this on the YouTube will obviously see your uniform there. Is this a consequence maybe of your sort of military physical conditioning that you've got this resilience?
I kind of went into the race pretty well prepared. I've living out here at the altitude in the heat. I was very well prepared. I'd done a good amount of mileage, done a lot of back-to-back runs. My feet are pretty hardcore anyway because I've done as long as I have in the army. It all just fell into place. And kind of day two, I think I put on my own Strava that I didn't come here to compete. It was all about completing it, but I seem to be doing quite well. So, having signed up for last year's race, then I found myself having to go back to the UK for a course, which was a bit of a shame because I put a lot of effort into helping Sam out, getting bits and pieces set up, making sure that vehicles were available. We had the right guys to kind of provide the support that Batuk did. Then found myself in rainy Hull for the week when the race was on. But I had run the Lewa marathon a few months ago, so kind of knew it was going to be hot, it was going to be hilly. Was quite familiar with the Loldaiga area because that's where, where we take the guys who come over here to train. That's an area that we use quite a lot, so kind of knew what to expect.
Yeah, well, excellent. And a bit of a sort of second home turf advantage has got to be useful out there. Was there anything you did differently in your training to sort of supplement what you're already doing to keep fit in order to prepare for this sort of 5 days of intensive activity in this very hot environment that we were in? And I know we've lost our scale for that because we spend time in the Namib Desert, but there was nothing cool or even mild about this week, and it was baking out there.
It was a hot one. And I kind of noted that the temperature had gone up a few degrees in the last few weeks. But my training was out of my front door, hang a right, and I'm heading into the foothills of Mount Kenya. So I would always start every morning, and certainly my long runs, I would always hang a right out of the gate, and it was always into a climb, to get the legs burning as early as I could. And strangely enough, one of the guys who was driving for us throughout the week, driving one of the trucks, moving the base camps and stuff, he'd seen me time and time again running through his village, kind of a few miles up the road from me, and he commented, and I said, yeah, that was me, and this is why I was doing it. He's like, oh, right, makes sense now. Yeah, this crazy Mzungu with his pack on his back going up the hills.
So, just to veer off slightly, you mentioned there the drivers from Batuk, and I just want to dig into that for a second because the team from Batuk were outstanding, and without that team and those vehicles and that logistical support, we wouldn't be able to do what we were doing. So, and Batuk sent a few of you guys along. It wasn't just you that were in there competing. So, what is it? How did that connection come about? And what is it that Batuk, and I mean this from the point of view of providing the logistics and providing our athletes, what is it you guys saw in this event that's made you get involved in it? Also, probably for the benefit of people watching this, what's Batuk?
So BATUK is the British Army Training Unit Kenya. There's a few of us that are based out here permanently. We're here to provide training to units from the UK. You come over for 7-8 weeks at a time to train in the arduous conditions on the areas that we've run through. The relationship the BATUK has with the event is as a result of Sam Taylor, who is, the Four Rangers dude. He also is the land manager for Lol Diger, where we ran through, and that's where we, as the British Army Training Unit Kenya, do our training. So we've Sam's known BATUK and BATUK's known Sam for quite some time. I think in previous years there's been a little bit of help, and last year there was a few people who ran. This year we kind of got a bit more organised and realised that we could save the Four Rangers charity, quite a considerable sum of money by using kit and equipment that we had out here. The drivers and the guys who were putting the tents up are our staff, and we found that they weren't, that busy. We couldn't get a few of them helping out. The guys at the water stops work for the Defence Infrastructure Organisation alongside BATUK, so they know the areas well, are good on the communications, good with the navigation and getting around the areas. It all just kind of seemed to fall into place this year, which was great, and moving forward, I think, I'll have a chat with Chris and try and get something set in stone so that BATUK, beyond the ultimate Four Rangers, can continue with what we've had over the last event.
Yeah, and I think you touched really there on the significance of that as an act from BATUK. It's that sort of removal of costs from the Four Rangers side of it is effectively a donation to the fundraising pot. This being a race where any profit goes straight back to the Rangers, that's effectively what you've done there. By replacing that cost, you've sent that cost forwards to the fundraising pot, and I just think that's excellent. We're sort of very grateful to have that support from you guys, and I just wanted to make sure that we touched on that in the podcast, and the guys at home realise, partly what infrastructure is required here. We've literally had to call in the army, and how important it is that people are willing to offer that kind of support because of the direct effect it has on the charity out there. Now, what about sending the athletes over? So we've got BATUK guys from your camp now going out for 5 days, charging through there. I mean, what's made them so keen to come along? Had you sold the idea to them, or do you get to order them onto the start line?
No, I pushed the idea. I pushed it out on some orders saying, if people are interested, get in touch. And there was a handful of people, foolhardy people, who came back to me and were like, yeah, great. And I said, well, just as an outline, this is the mileage that you're going to be covering. This is kind of the terrain you're going to be going over. We had Philippa, our physio, Son, our dentist, Alex Wardy, who is our rehab instructor, Brad, who's a PTI. So, we covered all med bases there. And then, a big part of the team was Adam, who was there, with the cook tent set up. And he just volunteered to come and help out. He said he's not in the shape to be doing the event, but really wanted to get involved. He'd helped out at a few events at the Browley Tri-Centre in Leeds, where he's from. So marshalling and all those sort of things is stuff that he's done before, and he just wanted to come and get involved. And I think having seen it, he's kind of kicking himself that he didn't, take a slot to run. Maybe next year if he decides to come back out.
I'm gonna say, tell him to drop us a line. He knows the right people now, and everyone in that camp was grateful to Adam, making sure that there was a constant supply of what all the runners needed. So, yeah, he knows a guy. Anyway, to get back to the race a little bit, you've got some experience with the conditions out there in Kenya. You've got some experience with the terrain that you're running through. Still, how did it meet your expectations? I mean, how hard did you expect it to be, and how hard actually was it? We really focus when we talk about this race on talking about the charity and the wildlife and all those sightseeing opportunities, but it's still a 5-day ultramarathon at the heart of it. So physically, how tough was this event?
So I've never done multi-day before. I've raced consecutive days and ran like a 50k ultra on the Saturday, and then gone and done a 10k on the Sunday, or done a night race on the Friday, and then a marathon on the Saturday. But piecing together 5 days worth. When with my training, I was pretty sort of hard over on. I needed to get at least a couple of 20 milers in back to back. Sort of longer runs during the week. But it takes a lot to prepare for something like this. I knew what to expect in terms of the elevation and the heat. And those people who came from the UK and elsewhere that weren't acclimatized, hadn't had a period of maybe a week or so coming into it, they were onto a hard one to start off with. And then some of the hills that were in there's not really a lot you can do for hills other than getting up and down hills. And some of those hills were pretty steep, pretty long, arduous hills, which, even from a military background, having kind of exercised out here a number of times, years and years ago, there's only so much preparation you could do for actually attempting to run or, get your carcass up these hills as quickly as you can.
Yeah, and it's not to be underestimated that we don't really talk a great deal about the hill climbs in there, but equally every checkpoint for obvious reasons, if we can put it on a high vantage point with a view of as much of the surrounding area as possible, we're gonna do that because the rangers want the best possible view of any animals that might be approaching that area. So there are a fair few climbs in there. I think you're right that quite a lot of the UK runners maybe didn't expect it to be as warm, but also didn't expect there to be any effect from the altitude. And there is a little bit of that to factor in as well, right? I imagine that's something you were used to as well, or were you feeling the consequences of that? I don't know exactly how the elevation on the course compares to where you're staying.
Pretty used to it. I live at 1,800 meters, and there was, a few hundred meters in it, but yeah, not enough to have an impact. When I went back to the UK last at Christmas, I thought, yeah, great, I'm going to be in great shape. I've been at altitude in the heat, and then the UK was cold and wet, so I didn't run very well when I went to my local park run. But there we go.
Yeah, well, there you go. You can't have everything, but you have at least won a 5-day ultra marathon. So, anyone who's got any criticism of you not winning that park run can pretty much pipe down now. So how does that feel? Like, I realized that during the event, you weren't in first place for a while, and there was an injury to the person ahead of you. But I think it's also fair to point out that you were seemingly getting stronger as the week went on. From my point of view, a lot of other people were starting to show the signs of fatigue and to drop back a little bit. You just seemed the same each morning when you set off. Now, is that just you putting that on, or would that be a fair assessment of how your race went?
I definitely got stronger as it went on, and I did message Tom when I'd finished, and kind of, wished him well with the recovery to his ribs. But Sam really wanted me to beat him. And I think had he sort of carried on throughout the week, it definitely would have been close towards the end. Kind of 10 minutes on day 2 or day 3, I think I'd caught up on him. And on day 5, I had an absolutely storming run. I was running, I was lucky that I had Jake to keep me company. I think I was pulling him along and he was pulling me along. But we were averaging kind of 9:30-minute miles, which for 28 miles is some going in this heat and terrain. But I felt like when we moved on to Old Pagetta, it was like being in my own backyard, because I'm on there so often. If I've got a quiet weekend, I'll jump in my car, wave my annual pass and drive on there. Even there's been a couple of occasions after work where my wife's picked me up with a cool box and we've just kind of sat there with a cold one, watching the sunset, which again was one of those perks of living and working out here.
Oh man, again, I'm looking out at the drizzly weather of Barnsley just outside my back window here, and regretting some life choices. But you're absolutely.
My life choices like the rough with the smooth, Yeah, so there's definitely downsides to what I do.
I can imagine. Yeah, what you said about stage 5 there, I remember from the photographer's point of view, we were sitting in a car on Old Pedge and there's wildlife everywhere. You stick your camera in any direction and you're going to see something. And we were sort of having a delightful time taking photos of the elephants and stuff. And we had a bit of time to spare, we thought. And then suddenly we looked at the tracker and we're like, is that right? Is that where James is? And yeah, I'm not saying we only just beat you to the finish line, but we had to get there a lot quicker than we expected to. You were flying on day 5.
It was, I genuinely think that me and Jake were just pulling one another along. I'm really chuffed that we crossed the finish lines together. For the stage win. And I know it was really close between him and Brad for 3rd and 4th, and he managed to pit Brad, who was his nose was put slightly out of joint, but he did go and congratulate Jake. So it was good.
Yeah, good. I'm glad that was squeaky. That came down to a couple of minutes in the end. But yeah, there you go. I mean, you have to take part of the blame as somebody who, as you say, was dragging Jake along a little bit on that last day. So just putting that out there for Brad. Yeah, having been through it now, you'd not done the multi-day thing before. You've now done it, won it, proved that you've got the resilience to, build on your performances day to day rather than just disintegrating slowly as most people seem to. Has this opened up any other ideas in your head? Is it something that you look into again in future?
Absolutely. By day 3, I was kind of thinking to myself, I feel really sorry for Jackie, my wife, because I'm going to do a few more of these, and then since getting back, I was like, Namibia. It's November. I'm pretty busy in November. I do happen to be going down to South Africa, for a week. But yeah, unfortunately, it's not going to align this time. But yeah, I'm definitely going to be looking at other multi-day stuff. Not necessarily the Highlands, because cold and wet isn't really my thing. But we'll see.
Yeah. And, not necessarily just meaning beyond the ultimate races there. There's plenty of other ultra challenges out there. I just sort of also mean in the sense of, is this something you'll maybe pursue a bit more in a focused way going forwards, the ultra distance type running events?
I think so. I've done a few sort of 24-hour events where I've ticked off 100 miles, and kind of leading into one of those. I had quite a good 100k race, which was mind-numbing because it was 5k's out and back in Essex. But I did a pretty good time for that. Both my 100-mile things I've done, at 24-hour events were 5-mile loops. So mentally, I think I'm there. I definitely want to look at something that's more point to point. So I've got a focus rather just going round and round in circles. But yeah, the multi-day stuff is definitely on my radar now.
And we have, if you looked at a percentage across all of the runners on any of our races and on most sort of ultra distance stuff that I've been involved with, there's quite a high percentage of people who are either in the military or have been in the past. Now, is there something that you've got from your sort of military training and background that helps you with that resilience over the course of 5 days? And if so, what is it and where can we get it? Because it's obviously been useful to you.
So my backstory is that I joined the Army at 16 years old. I've been in the Army nearly 28 years. And I'm just grateful that my knees and my ankles aren't completely shot from being an infantry soldier for that long. But I think there is definitely a kind of a mindset that you get within the military where things get tough. There isn't a get out clause. There isn't a broom wagon or anything like that. You need to get through it. Be that on operations or exercises like the type of thing that we conduct out here. There's definitely a military grade mental resilience that comes with. Some people get it early on in their careers. Some kind of grow into it as they climb the ranks. But being an old grade 28-year veteran of being in the army, I kind of think, I've got that in pretty big spoonfuls over the years.
Well, I'd say that was evidenced out there in this race, mate. Absolutely. And now I did say, I wanted to talk a bit about how physically hard this is rather than just focusing on the wildlife and the fun experiences. But let's focus on that now. Let's have a quick rundown. What did you get to see face to face while you were out on the course?
So, giraffes, elephants, hyenas, zebras all over the place. I hate to admit this, I'm a bit of a spotter when it comes to the birds as well. The lilac-breasted roller is in fact Kenya's national bird, and there was a few of them out there as well. So it's just that being up as close as we managed to get was just phenomenal. And I drive through Old Pajetta regularly. I've been safaring over here sort of in various places over the last year since I've been posted out here. But being on the ground, in my size 9s, running along that close to the wildlife is just amazing, absolutely amazing. And it's an experience that will absolutely stay with me, for the rest of my life, because that opportunity just isn't there, to run through these kind of areas. At times, I haven't seen a ranger for a while. Hopefully there's nothing around. And at one point, I think Sam said, "Oh yeah, the first however many runners had run past this point where there was a lion that no one had actually picked up on, that was really close to one of the tracks." And I don't know how much of that was Sam bigging it up, but yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a certain amount of hyperbole involved when the stories make their way back to camp. But yeah, you can't have eyes on every single inch of this territory. And I've heard similar stuff myself. I think it's incredibly interesting to hear that point of view from somebody who does have access to sort of evening after work drinks on Old Pajetta if they want to at any time, that it's still that big step of being able to be there on foot in person, that's something you still wouldn't have had the opportunity to do, even being where you are based. And in terms of the rangers, you mentioned them there. I know there are times where you maybe haven't seen one for a while, although I've often found if I haven't seen a ranger for a while and then I go to pee behind a bush or something, there'll be a ranger 5 meters away from me that I never noticed. That seems to happen to me on a regular basis.
They absolutely just kind of, know the shaping spots and will just appear, and there'll be a jambo from behind a bush. You're like, oh, God, there he is. Yeah, yep. So I'm sure they're there. I'm sure.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But, what gets talked about a lot after this race is that opportunity to be among the rangers, the guys that are actually benefiting from this event. You being based in Kenya, you'll know more of the sort of local language than we do. You'll have interacted with some of these guys maybe previously, but I mean, is that something you'll remember from this event as well? That opportunity to actually be among the people and learn about their day-to-day work while you're out there running in support of them.
Yeah, absolutely. I've seen them kind of dotted about on the conservancies and the places that I've been, but for them to kind of come and say, this is what we do, this is why we do it, this is how we do it, it really adds credibility to to all the money that's raised, and the support that Sam and the Four Rangers team provide for them. Really humbling experience to meet them, and when they turned up to the campsite en masse, it was just like, this is pretty bloody awesome. Yeah, really good. So yeah, again, it just adds to the experience of being out here, in my size 9s, sort of running along the tracks and the trails.
And yeah, I mean, in terms of the course itself, like it's an amazing thing to be able to meet the runners. It's amazing to see the wildlife. And actually, as you mentioned there, that evening when all the rangers that had been working on the first couple of days came over en masse, that was that was great. That was like a hair on the back of the neck moment. We hadn't scheduled that. It just happened to turn out that way. But getting to have everyone interact and take that giant school photo with all the rangers and all the runners together, that really gelled that together, that we are all here working on one thing for one purpose. And I love that. But are there any other moments that stand out across the course? Like, people have their favorite viewpoints, their bits in a race where you're just feeling great and these memories stick in your head for life. Are there any particular moments like that from along the way that'll stay with you?
Strangely enough, not me moving along particularly well, but when Chris came past me on sort of towards the end of, I think it was day 4, and I was just struggling because I'm terrible at running downhills, and that's, quads were burning, knees were hurting, and he came flying past me. He was like, "You're doing really well, mate," and I was like, oh, "Right, yeah, I know I can do this," and just kind of, it was that little pick me up that I needed to kind of dig in and try and get myself moving a bit quicker on the downhills. The uphills, I'll remember all of those just because I love the uphills and overtaking people on the hills and kind of smiling as I'm going past and saying hello. There was some disgruntled, not disgruntled, but certainly pained looks on people's faces as I'm smiling my way up the uphills.
Yeah, I can imagine what sort of sentiment you were met with there, because nobody else is looking forward to the hills when they get to them. But you told me specifically a couple of times during the race, that's what you look forward to. That's sort of bread and butter for you. And yeah, you made that pretty clear. You were storming up those inclines. Is there anything in particular you do in training that's got you to that point?
Not really. I haven't done any running with poles other than in my training. It's not something I've done for for years and years. So getting poles and kind of getting the miles in with the poles on the inclines, I found just really helped. And I was like, wow, this is great. That my sore old man knees and are fine on the uphills. It's the downhills where I found myself struggling.
Yeah, and not to mine into too much geeky detail here, but whether to use poles or not is something that we see debated in like our Facebook groups and on the coaches on the way to and from races all of the time. And people either swear by them or hate them. And I can see the benefit. And I've had people like Ian Keith on the spine. He's like a 4-legged animal when he moves along with poles. They are genuinely pulling him along in quite a significant way. Did you find that? And was there a period of adjustment to getting used to them?
There was. I did kind of go quite geeky myself and watched a load of YouTube videos, and some of it was like that people were just moving far too smoothly with them. And then I think I watched one of Gary House's ones, and he was kind of in his typical sort of quite dry northern way. This is how you do it. I was like, right, that's what I need to do. And then the more I practiced it, the more it just kind of came along quite nicely. And I kind of it just fell into place, which was quite nice. So yeah, I would probably almost certainly on multi-day stuff carry them because they weigh next to nothing. And if there are inclines, then, well, they're there, they're there if I needed them.
Yeah, in terms of the weight cost, you're probably exchanging them for maybe one big freeze-dried meal. Like, they're not particularly heavy things. And no, I appreciate that because I've not having a great deal of experience with them myself, but I've seen people use them so effectively.
Yeah.
It's also possibly robbed me of my last question because I would usually ask at this point, like, is there one thing that you would advise people who are thinking of signing up to this or a similar race? One training tip or one bit of equipment. We've sort of covered the poles now, but is there anything else? If I'm thinking of signing up to this race tomorrow and I don't know much about it, what should I know going in?
Well, funnily enough, the when we were kind of the night before it started and people are sorting out their kit, you're meeting people or chatting to people on the bus, and when you got up to your tents and sorting stuff out, and people are looking at other people's kit going, oh, you've got that. Oh, you've got that. But a common military thing is fight light, freeze at night. So, if you can do without it to reduce the weight, and you have to put up with it being a bit colder at night, then do that. Box ticked. But I think there's definitely an amount of kind of having something that you look forward to at the end, at the end of each day. And I carried a load of Snickers bars, because after a long run, I like going in and I'm just all about all the food, anything. But a Snickers bar was enough to kind of quell that until I tucked into my freeze-dried meal. So yeah, another just little look forward to, for little reward for finishing the day.
I really like that. Those sort of two messages there, I think are the perfect sort of sentiment for this kind of event. It's, you're going to have a mindset here where you're going to experience some discomfort, and you might need to put yourself in the way of that to get the balance of your kit right across the event. But also make sure you got something nice for when you get to camp in the evening, because everyone needs a little treat after a day like that, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, thanks very much, James. I'm not going to take up any more of your time, but I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me this morning. And, I hope we get to see you out there again. It was fantastic to meet you, and fantastic to see you do so well in the race. You were really, really strong out there. So well done from all of us, pal.
Cheers, Will. Thanks a lot.
No worries. You have a good day. Hello then to Chris Hewitt. Chris, it's good to chat to you in a more formal way. I always enjoy seeing you on the races. And here you are in an official capacity as a finisher of one of the events, not as a race medic, which is the usual form in which I'm addressing you. How are you feeling now, a sort of week or so on from getting back from Kenya? Are you still feeling any physical, mental effects of what you did?
Oh, Will, the whole thing has been an absolute roller coaster. So, flew back from one of the best weeks of my life, which was Four Rangers Ultra. Genuinely one of the best experiences I've ever had. Had a couple of days off in Kenya, which is, as you know, an amazing country.
Beautiful. Got
thoroughly dicked around by an airline, which I won't mention, but it's 3 letters and they're from the Netherlands. And the journey back was quite hectic and fraught, but actually got back, then straight into 3 night shifts, and I've just about come around from that. So it's like been a completely bizarre experience of kind of endurance traveling, let alone kind of the endurance of the ultra. So it's really nice now the dust is settling, and I'm just beginning to kind of reflect on the last couple of weeks and trying to make sense of it all.
I am so sorry to hear that, mate. I'm speaking to you at the other end of basically going through a washing machine for the last week. That's got to have affected your recovery from the event a little bit. And generally, I always ask any of the runners that I interview after a race sort of where they are with their recovery, and it's quite a loaded thing, because people listening to this are trying to pick up tips for how they're going to get through their own race when it comes around. And it's interesting to hear this from somebody who just got sucked straight into work again, who just went straight back into the night shifts and had to just hit the ground running after what they'd done. Were you feeling the physical effects of that as you went into these night shifts?
Yeah, so I think the key thing is that I'm not a competitive runner. I don't take running hugely seriously. That's not to say it doesn't dominate my life. It absolutely does. It's my one kind of passion outside of work that keeps me on the straight and narrow, both physically and mentally. So it's incredibly important, but I kind of don't take it that seriously. And the only person I'm out to compete with is my own expectations, really. So one of the key things that I have, I run quite a lot of single stage, single day sort of ultras, 30, 40, 50 miles. And I've not done many sort of multi-stages like Four Rangers, but the common theme I always kind of aim for is that I want to perform as well as I possibly can, but I'm not prepared to push myself enough to injure myself. And I always want to be that person the next day who can get up from the breakfast table quicker than anyone else, and I'm not kind of like hobbling around town the next day, and I can go to work because I have a really active job and I need to be able to go to work and not let my colleagues and the people I meet down. So I consider myself like I'm a self-defense runner. If I'm pushing myself and the old knees and the old ankles start to hurt, then I listen to my body and I dial back a little bit. And that's a really good, that's really good for me on my one-day events, because I can go to work the next day. But it's also great on multi-days, because it means I'm fit on the start line the next day, ready to do my best again.
That's excellent to hear. Doing what I do here on the podcast, I'm often talking to the winners of races, people who've done ridiculous feats of endurance, and some of these people are in the pain cave, for hours and hours at a time, pushing themselves at the absolute limit of what they can do. And that's not the experience of most of the people on our events. Right? Yeah. You are having to push yourself extremely hard, don't get me wrong, but not to or beyond breaking point, ideally. That's not what you came here for. And what you're describing is maybe a bit more of a relatable experience of doing one of these events. But what I think's also interesting is you talk about yourself there in a way that, maybe we'd have expected you to be in the very back of the results, or, you say you're not a runner who takes yourself desperately seriously. You still did well. You were consistently strong throughout the race. You have proven yourself to be a runner who at least looks like they're taking it seriously from the outside. But you seem to have struck a balance with it, where it is something you do to maybe escape from the stress of an everyday job. It's so you don't want it to be loaded with all that stress and competitiveness and high stakes feel. But equally, you really have brought yourself to it. You dedicated yourself to the training in a way that meant you were able to perform pretty well. There's a great balance in there. And I'm sure if you could somehow encapsulate how on earth you've done that into a few sentences, that a lot of people would like to hear that. And is that how it feels from your side? That's just my outside perception.
It's lovely to hear that, actually. And that's probably something that I needed to hear, because I consider my training for 4 Rangers to have been abysmal. I started out in the new year, just after I think I finally committed sort of around Christmas time, and in the new year I set out an 8-month training plan, and I probably got it somewhere. It's absolutely beautiful. It's color coded and everything.
Love it.
And it takes me through a series of stages. First of all, just getting back into the routine after kind of having, the deepest, darkest winter, taking it very easily and not doing a great deal. So I've had a month kind of just getting back into the swing of things, building up my base fitness, then looking at 4 Rangers and the individual aspects that make it a challenge. Long distances, in heat, self-sufficient carrying a rucksack, for example, are 3 things. And each of those require a little bit of preparation and training. So then I would focus on one of those 3 things. And then when I've focused on all of those a bit, I'll bring them all together and assemble them and be doing long runs with a rucksack, simulating heat, and build it all up in stages. And I had a test event. My B race was going to be in, I think, early June, a multi-stage event somewhere hot, and that was going to be like my test event. It wasn't self-sufficient, so I wouldn't be carrying a pack, but it'd give me a really idea of where I was. And then I'd have the best part of 3 months then to get ready for my A race, which was 4 Rangers Ultra in Kenya. And so, like I said, looked amazing, absolutely beautiful training plan, and it didn't survive the first month. Stuff happened at work, stuff happened in life, and then I had my first ultra of the season, which was a fairly local one in Wales. Hadn't prepped for it, had been a bit unwell, and the sensible thing to have done would have been not to have done it, because I was just going to overreach and injure myself. So obviously I did it, and I overreached, and I injured myself.
Of course.
Yeah,
Why would?
but it's okay. It's okay because it's an early stage. I've listened to myself on the event, and I've just kind of like slowed down and got through, and promised to give myself 2 weeks off and just recover from sort of this non-specific musculoskeletal sort of achy ankle injury. But actually, we have a local fell race. I live in Cheddar. We have the Big Cheese fell race up and down the Mendip Hills. It's sadistic. They're little routes that I run, every day, but put together in an appalling way. And it's 15 miles just up and down, backwards and forwards. And it's a great race, and it'd be a shame to miss it. I mean, obviously, I've just had 2 weeks off after injury, and I haven't trained. So the best thing to do would be not to do it. Anyway, I did it, and I overreached, and I injured myself again. And you can guess what I'm going to say next is I had 2 weeks off. And then it was another ultra, which I paid for, and I quite enjoy them, and it's relatively local. And the sensible thing would be, that I went and I did that.
Yeah, I suspected as much, yes.
And as a result, had to have the best part of 6 to 8 weeks pretty much off running. I was able to hit the gym and maybe do a little bit of swimming instead. But that wonderful, pretty training plan out the window. And it's like, Chris, you've got to be sensible here. You've got to start taking your own advice, the advice that you give other people as a medic. And I literally went back to couch to 5K and just being really, really careful and listening to my body and taking my own advice. So I called it the couch to 230K. And I did that over a period of 3 months, did 3 months of my 8-month training plan, and then went out to Kenya, determined that I was going to enjoy it, I was going to finish it, and I wasn't going to injure myself. And I think did far better than I expected. Just trying to be consistent.
Well, I think that's fantastic. In terms of relatable training experiences, I imagine there are a lot of people listening to this who will have been through similar situations themselves. But what I think is impressive there is, rather than that getting you into a sort of spiral of negative thoughts about your training, you have taken a moment to sit down and go, hang on, I advise other people on what to do in these situations. What should I actually be doing? And what the decisions you made from that point really seem to have worked out for you. I mean, I just checked quickly while you were talking there. 16th overall, the better part of 18 hours between you and the back of the pack. So you really were doing very well and very consistently doing it out there. How much of a base of physical fitness were you working with before you started your outstanding training plan? And I really do imagine that's an outstanding spreadsheet.
It's beautiful. I'll share it with you sometime.
Thank you.
I am not a gym bunny. I'm not particularly fit, but I'm a skinny little runt who likes running. And it's pretty much the only exercise I do consistently. So I'm a slim, 60-something kilogram chap who has skinny little arms, and I'm quite a different physique from a lot of the people I work with. I have quite a physical job, so a lot of people are quite muscular and strong, and I'm the skinny little one that can kind of creep around and move quickly and doesn't stop. But I think it's that level of fitness is useful, but I think the key thing is that I've explored how not to do everything. The only other multi-day ultra I've done before for Rangers was a little race. You might have heard of it, called the Marathon des Sables.
There's a fairly familiar looking medal just over your shoulder. Is that related in any way, or?
I don't like to mention it, but I finished Marathon des Sables. right at the back of the pack. But it was the tough year, 2021, the really hot one. Don't like to talk about it. And when I don't like to talk about it, the only times I do like to talk about it is if people have paid a £5 for a little ticket in the local community hall, and then we put the money to charity. So I'll talk about it then. And I call my presentation How Not to Run Marathon des Sables, because I basically made every single mistake you could possibly make. And exactly the same way in my training earlier this year, when I kind of overreached and injured and then re-injured myself, I've made all of the mistakes despite knowing better. And I hope that means that when I'm a medic volunteering for Beyond the Ultimate or giving advice to friends, that perhaps that gives my advice a little bit more weight, because I've actually done the right and the wrong things and can really tell people the pros and cons of everything.
Excellent. I mean, this is exactly what I was hoping we'd end up tapping into here, is that, you have quite a unique viewpoint here as someone who has both done things the wrong way as an athlete who is doing this on a hobby basis and has a very busy and challenging career around it. Just as most people listening to this will probably be in a similar situation there, but also an experienced medic on these races. And I've seen you operate in extreme environments. I've watched you patching runners together, and that must have armed you with some knowledge and experience that helped you training for this as well. Like, so what did you bring from your experiences as a race medic to your training and to your approach to this race?
Well, being an expedition medic was where it all started. So I was a medic first and then an athlete. I back in 2016 or 2017, I started volunteering and then becoming an expedition medic on a whole range of races all over the world. Not just BTU races. Other races exist, apparently.
They do. I'm aware of that.
Yeah. And I've been really lucky to have gone to some amazing places. And some of them have been immensely challenging. And, we think of, BTU's Desert Ultra, incredibly hot, multi-day, self-sufficient ultra. And then we think of the Jungle Ultra. I've been there, not done it, but got the T-shirt as a medic, where it's just as hot and incredibly humid, and everything is out there to kill you.
Everything.
Literally everything. And, I've also kind of worked in very, very kind of emotionally and from a human point of austere environments like Sierra Leone, which are hot and humid and just surrounded by human and political tragedy. And that is a hugely rewarding environment to work in. We meet amazing people, the athletes, obviously, the crew who are behind the races, obviously, but also the local people who we interact with. Yeah. One of the really important bits I thought of the For Rangers Ultra is we get to run through this incredible environment in Kenya, through these conservancies where we meet the rangers, find out firsthand about their lives. But we also step outside the conservancies at points, and we run past villages and people living in shacks at the side of the road. And I think that's an incredibly important experience for us all on For Rangers. Many people who choose For Rangers to be their first ultra, and it may be the first time that they've gone abroad, they live in a Western country, it might be the first time they've gone to somewhere like Africa, and experience firsthand the diversity of life outside Western countries. So it's hugely useful. And I kind of say my running started with being a medic on races, and that's true. I met these incredible people, these super athletes who did multi-day ultras in these kind of amazing places, and world famous names who I've met in tents in deserts and in forests and stuff. And for a while you kind of go, oh wow, you're amazing, you're a superhero. Oh, I could never do anything like you do. And that's actually true. I could never be Elizabeth Barnes, running marathon dissemblers in 20 hours. I could never do that. But there's other people in that tent as well, and they're a little bit more normal. They're still pretty amazing. I've never met someone do a multi-day ultra in a wild place and not gone, you're pretty amazing. And you go from going, oh, I could never do that, to going, do you know what? I could do that. Need a little bit of work, but I could do that. And then the next step is going, oh yeah, I want to do that.
We've watched a few medics go through this one.
Yeah.
It's
And
interesting to hear you describe it in detail.
That tiny little step away to going, I'm doing it. And yeah, we and for rangers in particular is very addictive for the medics. Very addictive. And we see a lot of the medics then pulling on a pair of shorts and a pair of shoes and giving it a go.
Absolutely. I mean, from a medic's point of view, you may well be getting helicoptered to your checkpoint or back from it. You are going to see wildlife. You're going to spend a lot of time around some of the local team and hearing their stories. You are immersed in the race just as completely in a different way to those athletes. And I can understand that. Coming from the viewpoint of somebody who's been out there to cover the race media 4 times now, it is addictive. It's a very rounded experience. I think what you struck on there of passing through some of the areas outside of the conservancies as well. Chris hadn't shied away with building this race from taking it outside of that bubble. There are people with enormous privilege in terms of wealth who can come and spend time on those conservancies and never set foot outside a helicopter or a 4x4. And they're not really experiencing Kenya face to face. And we wanted that to be a part of this, for you to come away with a lot to think about, not just about your own achievements, but about the place where you've just been. So it's great for me to hear you express that as well, having experienced it.
And everyone will process that in a different way, and they may come out of that deciding to make massive changes to their life. They may come out of it actually feeling quite melancholy and concerned about their new worldview, or they may kind of like process it a lot easier and fit the jigsaw puzzle together much easier. But everyone will do some thinking, and everyone's going to come out of it a better person in some way, whether that is a big life change for them or just another little piece of the jigsaw.
You've got some really interesting stuff to say about this race, and I'm slightly concerned that I tried to apply a 30-minute time limit to this interview. So getting down to brass tacks from the point of view of people who are listening to this and trying to glean out any information that might help them with what seems now like an overwhelming challenge. What did you take from medicing? What have you learned from the mistakes of the runners you've patched back together that helped you along on this event?
So, being in a race medic and being an athlete has some actually really common themes to it. And the number one thing is that success is your ability to administrate and manage yourself. So for the medics, that's you need to be in the right place, you need to be at the right time, and you need to be fit and well yourself. And it's exactly the same, really, for the athletes. So we all know what we need to do. We need to have good nutrition. We need to sort out our own feet. We need to rehydrate. We need to look after our electrolytes. And it's so easy for an athlete, particularly when they're in the zone, to forget one or more of those things, pushing on an injury rather than stopping and dealing with it. Oh, my rucksack's rubbing a little bit. Oh, just turn the music up and keep on going. No, just stop. You're rubbing your back raw. What are you doing? Stop it. Sort yourself out. And, you know, wash your hands. Why do people not wash your hands, you dirty pigs? What are you doing? I've been on races, and it's, as far as I'm aware, it's never affected BTU or any of BTU races. A little bit smaller, a little bit more intimate, and I like to think a higher class of runner. You know, we're sensible, well-managed people. But I've been to races where people have not only shit themselves out of a race, because there hasn't been basic hygiene, everyone else has shit themselves out of the race as well. And just simple things about looking after yourself and looking after other people by being stringent about your hand hygiene, being careful about where you pee and poo, looking after your feet, drinking the water, taking your electrolytes, and when you're starting to feel rough, listen to your body and respond to it. Do something about it. Take some positive steps.
I think there's this strange cavalier attitude that still permeates through ultra running and I guess a lot of other sports as well, that it's somehow a sign of weakness to take care of yourself. The idea is to have run as hard as possible and to have pushed yourself beyond breaking point. Some of the fault there is in the way these types of events are marketed. As a consequence of being such big challenges, you can't help but be saying things like, this is an extreme challenge, this is quite tough, you are going to have a very difficult few days. And people seem to come in with this attitude of, I'm going to prove that nothing could stop me, I could be run over and still get through this race. Ain't nobody getting a medal for that. What's going to get you through is having the humility and taking the time to stop and deal with your problems as you come up. Like part of the key to the success of runners like yourself, who I see, who are maybe not there to get the podium, didn't come out there trying to win the thing, but have prepared well and continue to take care of themselves. We don't have to worry about you guys. You're not on Chris's little notebook of runners that he has to keep an eye on, because you are on top of your admin and we can see it. You are washing your hands. We know. I know that you're drinking enough water because I'm standing with a camera outside the checkpoint and you're shouting to me to check if I've had enough water recently. And
when a runner's telling you, when a runner is telling a member of the media crew to drink water, probably you need to go and drink some water if it's that obvious.
And you were right.
There's a paradox. So you said you don't get a medal for pushing yourself to breaking point. Well, a lot of those people who do push themselves do end up getting the medals.
Yes. Yeah.
But we know that at some point the wheels are going to fall off. And, you know, you've interviewed some absolutely amazing athletes, some of whom I've been on events with, some of whom I'm lucky enough to consider as friends. And, you know, I know on the route through life that some of them are taking, they're going to make some amazing achievements. They're going to perform really well. And I'll be there for them when their wheels fall off. And the darkest moment of their life won't be when they're pushing through a pain cave. It'll be when they go, my plans for next year, they're in tatters because I've really injured myself and I pushed too far. But yeah, if we can, if I think that there's quite a good model. If you imagine a pie chart and the things you need for an ultra event are a level of fitness, a level of preparation, and a level of luck. And those three segments fill up a pie chart and they make 100%. And what you want to do is make the segment that involves luck as small as possible. If you haven't trained very well and you're not very fit, then you have to fill that gap with as much preparation as possible, making sure your kit's right, getting everything else right. And that shrinks down the amount of luck you need. And luck will always fill up the gap. And sometimes you can rely on luck and you just don't want to.
Yeah. Yeah, very, very well put. You are quite eloquent, Chris. I've always thought that, but interviewing you on the podcast, this is great stuff. Why you've referred to this as one of the best weeks of your life, and I've read your race blog, and for the benefit of anyone who wants to read this, and you absolutely should, we're going to be actually putting that onto our website and sharing that around because we loved it. It was a great insight from an athlete's point of view of what it's actually like to be out there. What was your experience? What made this the best racing experience out there? What stands out for you as the thing that really cements that point of view? That stumped you. The amount of stuff we've talked about here.
Where do you start? There's one moment which I think encapsulates everything for me, and that was on day three. Day three, the novelty's worn off. You know, the shoulders hurt, the back hurts, you'd quite like a proper shower and some decent food, you know. But it's hump day, you're halfway through, so you know, you're being carried along, and you know, I'm joking. The camaraderie's been fantastic. Everything's been going really well. And I was running along in the first, I don't know, 5-10K of the race, and run round a corner, and all of a sudden I'm face to face with a bull rhino.
Wow.
Just let that sink in for a moment, everyone. Face to face with a bull rhino. And in the split second, you've got to decide, do I stay here and watch this amazing spectacle, or do I run for my life? And in that split second, a ranger appeared from behind a bush, swiftly followed by yours truly, Will Roberts, amazing wilderness photographer, and reassure me everything's okay. This rhino is distracted. He's not interested in me. He's not interested in the runners. He's quite well known to the rangers. The rangers keep a good eye on this rhino. He's got a nickname. He's called Alfie. They know everything about him. His eyesight's rubbish, but his smell is great. And what he's smelling at the moment is that last night, another bunch of rhinos came onto his territory and peed everywhere. And he's furious. He's this grumpy rhino. He looks very much like I imagine you look like when your alarm goes off at 5 o'clock in the morning and you have to get up. He is thoroughly pissed off. And he's pawing the ground, and he's grunting, and he's goes over towards trees and backs up to them and kind of like tries to knock them down, and he's kicking down bushes. And basically just anything that smells of these alien rhinos, he's trying to like destroy and then replace with his own smell. And just those few minutes I spent within a few feet of this incredible animal, there was this real commune with nature moment. And that's a money can't buy experience. And yeah, I know 4 Rangers Ultra was an experience that I paid money for. So money clearly did buy that experience.
Yes.
But that wasn't planned. You know, that's not a thing that you can guarantee ever happening. And that little kind of that energy, that moment of being there, just incredible. And I was running at the time with another runner called Andreas from Germany. I've met him before on the Desert Ultra. A great little runner and a really nice guy. And for a couple of miles afterwards, we ran together and we just didn't say a word. We were just trying to process really quite an emotional moment. And at least one of us was moved to tears, and it just incredible. And the whole experience, kind of like everything clicks into place. We're in this amazing but fragile, semi-managed ecosystem, seeing some of the most endangered animals on Earth being looked after by rangers, these incredible men and women who are so passionate about what they do, and they're being supported by this incredible charity initiative for rangers, where the funds raised go directly to helping these people do this job. And not only is it really effective at preventing poaching, but they're also loads of like value-added benefits for the local community, not just in jobs and employment and training and welfare of the people directly involved, but they help with the security of the communities within the local area. They're effectively like a local police force. So they're really able to look after the communities, which then wins hearts and minds for the environmental cause. Suddenly, all these little bits of the jigsaw puzzle come together, and the picture is of Chris Hewitt, this middle-aged man in a pair of shorts, just standing for a few minutes within arm's reach of a rhino. Just how can you top that?
I hear you. I spent an hour there with Alfie, and watched the expressions and the sort of emotions that each runner that came through there went through. And yeah, it was a moment that I think really drove it home for quite a few people. But you've put it exceptionally well there. It's seeing every cog there that's meshed together, producing something all at once. And yeah, that's amazing to hear you say that.
It's just I don't know how to explain it, but for 6 or 7 years, I've been all over the world on different adventures, different expeditions, different ultras, and without doubt, they're some of the best experiences I've had. But I've been looking for the last 6 years. I've been searching for the best ultra experience in the world. It's got to be this. Nothing can top it.
Well, thank you. I can't say that. I come from a place of bias, but it's great to hear you say it, because that's how it looks to me. I haven't experienced every other race on the planet, but how could it be? How would you top that? Yeah,
I genuinely don't know. It's what I'm trying to think of. I'm trying to think of the bad sides. I mean,
it's still an ultra.
Excessively hilly, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean,
we could shave 20 kilometers off each day and make a walking tour out of it. But there's got to be something to endure as well, and that balance is important. Yeah. Those hills are going to kick your ass.
It's a tough race, and you can make it as tough as you want, and it's incredible, absolutely incredible. And that was, I think it was shown by the diversity of athletes running the race, from kind of, the semi-pro runners through to people who, this was their first ultra. And what an amazing first ultra to choose. Just incredible.
Oh, yeah. Spoil you for the others, really, but
yeah,
there you go. Well, thanks, Chris, for signing us off very succinctly there, and keeping us on topic, which is something I haven't done desperately well through this interview. Seriously, I advise anybody who is listening to this and wants more of an insight into what it's really like to be a runner in this event, to go and find Chris's blog. I will make sure there is a link to that in the description of this episode, so you can find it nice and easily. It is excellent and entertaining, insightful and fun. So I absolutely do recommend that people go and have a read of that. Before I bugger off, and before I fill a hard drive with us chatting, I generally sign off on these asking people if they have one thing, one bit of advice, whatever it may be, kit or training or mindset or whatever it is, that they would impart on somebody who is listening to this because they're thinking of signing up next time around. Is there a thing that they should know going in that's going to help them?
Oh, well, so you say you do this at the end of every one of your podcasts, and if I'd bothered to watch any of your podcasts all the way through to the end, I'd have known that, and I'd have been well prepped for this question.
I know no one's listening. That's how I get to sneak these things in.
So my bit of advice is most people will take a long time to prep for an event like this. You know, I, in theory, had kind of like 8 months training plan. And that will be over before you realise. In a blink of an eye, you'll be standing on the start line. When it seems like only a few seconds ago, it was Christmas and you were deciding what running shoes to ask for Christmas. You know, and the other thing that will go in a blink of an eye is the time between the start line on the first day and the finish line on the last day. So there's no time to waste. And, you know, my bit of advice is when you start your training plan 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, whatever, a year in advance, when you decide that you're going to commit to this, get yourself, go onto the website or the Instagram page or something and find a photograph that speaks to you. And for me, it was a photograph of a ranger with a baby rhino, a baby orphaned rhino. And the look on this ranger's face as he's looking at this rhino, the rhino's like this little cheeky scamp of a rhino, obviously bubbling with personality, little toddler rhino. And the ranger is beaming with pride and satisfaction and joy. You know, any single girls out there, get yourself a man who looks at you the way a ranger looks at a baby rhino. Okay?
Yeah, great advice.
So I got this photograph. It spoke to me. I stuck it up on my wardrobe next to my training plan. And any day I decided that I couldn't be bothered to go out on a run, or I couldn't be bothered to research my dehydrated meals, or I couldn't be bothered to choose which trainers I was going to wear, I looked at the little baby rhino and his ranger, and that gave me the motivation to pull myself together and to get out and get ready for Kenya.
Wow. Well, thank you. That's an excellent answer, as many of yours has been, Chris. I've got a sneaking suspicion we might need to organise another podcast appearance at some point, because I feel like there's a lot to mine into that we've only briefly touched on today. And congratulations, you really did do incredibly well. And it was a pleasure to watch you do so well out there.
Look at this medal. I mean, feel the heft of that. Look at that.
Yeah, it's got heft.
Incredible.
Handmade in the Masai Mara.
I know. It's the heaviest thing on my little medal display.
Just how you did that training.
Yeah, it's up there with my 5K races and the Santa Dash medals.
I mean, it could be hung up there with the MDS one, but I imagine the heft of it would pull that painting off the wall. So maybe not.
Yeah, it needs reinforcement.
Right. Anyway, Chris,
take care now.
Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you so much.
And thanks so much. And seriously, if you're listening at home, read that blog.
See you next time, Will.